Bang Theory.
I bet that's horrible. I bet that's an insult now.
We're live.
Hello. We're off. Phil, Phil, you keep doing things with your hair, and I gotta be honest, I'm not sure this is working for you because you cut it all off last week, and no one's going to believe that it's just grown that quickly. Oh, hang on.
Or changed colour.
Wait a minute. Do you like my acting?
Not Philip, I'm afraid.
Right. No, but you're quite feminine for a bloke called Alex.
Hey.
Anyway, right, ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Alexandra Lichtenfeld, who is sitting in, and I'm delighted that she is, for the next 3 hours with me. Philip, I never really liked him. You know, it's
He's all right. He's all right. He's well-spoken chap.
What the hell? You know, he's the cheapest in his price range. Phil's taken a few days off. He's gone to Wales.
In the rain.
I can't imagine Phil Dave in Wales. This is I don't know what they'd make of him in Wales. You know, he doesn't look like a sheep. He's not a miner. I mean, like, you know, someone who digs. I don't mean that's someone who's 12. So what the heck? Phil Jones, straight out of the gap there. Right. Good morning. Hope you're both well. Thank you very much, Phil.
Thank you very much.
Anyway, a little bit of background for you, in case you just think I just was wandering up the street and said, you with your crazy round glasses and asymmetrical hair, come on the show.
Leave my asymmetrical hair out of it.
It's your trademark, as is your little logos and everything. Alex and I have known each other. I know Alex is only 28, but we've known each other for about 35 years. Extraordinary. When back in the day when dinosaurs ruled the world, and we were doing the flying eye, Alex became the first sponsor of the flying eye before it was even a thing. And what was it back then? BT.
It was Cellnet. It was just Cellnet then.
It wasn't even BT.
Very long time ago.
So all of you over 21 who might remember the phone company, the mobile phone company Cellnet, Alex was the grand fromage of Cellnet, and they did the first deal with us to sponsor us, and we became colleagues, and then we became buddies, and we're still buddies. Like it must be about worryingly 35 years, which is strange because you must have been working when you were 10.
2. I was 2.
You were 2 years. You were 2 years old. So that is why Alex, and I'm sure you've listened to it, does a terrific show on Men's radio station. All on her own that we discussed, and then she put together, and she does it great. And I'm delighted that she's here. Alex, why don't you read some of the stuff on the right? Can you read it?
Phil Jones saying
no idea how good a writer.
It was not very good, but I've got glasses on, which helps marginally. Phil Jones says, good morning. Hope we're both well. Linda Dave has said, hi, guys.
Who's that Linda Dave? Always butting it. Always. Who is she? She related?
I might not pronounce these last names properly. Julia Hearsay saying, good morning. Nice lady.
Julia Hersey. Julia Hersey.
Hersey, thank you. Yeah. Ed Grossman, good morning and happy Friday.
We'll be the judge of that.
What's it? Andrew Lucas, good morning, Russ. Hello, Alex. Where's Phil?
I'll
Wales.
Tell you where Phil is baking a potato. If you want to know the way, just listen to what baked potatoes say. Andrea, I'll never get tired of that. Phil has gone to... I was going to make up all sorts of gags, but so his mum Linda's listening. He's gone on holiday for a couple of days. He's in what? There she is. Andy, Phil is in Wales. Linda, I want to know something. Did you pack his little bag? Did he pack it himself, or did you? I bet you packed it. I bet you came in and said, Philip, have you remembered? Clean underwear? Got spare socks? Have you got a hanky?
Leave him alone.
I have left him alone.
He needed a break.
He did need a break.
And with all this wind, at least his hair won't be flopping in it.
He won't be moving.
No, he won't.
He looks great. Alex, Phil, and I had lunch. Was it this week?
Tuesday. Boiling hot. Don't want to talk about it.
We met up for a working lunch, socially distanced, and to discuss a whole raft of things throughout the shows and programs. And Phil looked fantastic. Really, I know. I'd take the mick out of it. We are merciless with each other, but he really looked great. It's a very big deal for him, and I didn't underplay it. Zebedee Franklin. I love that name.
Hi, Zeb.
Do you know
I do. Yes.
My son-in-law.
Yes.
My son-in-law's middle name, and I thought they were kidding, is Zebedee. When they got married, I got up and said, "How many drugs were your parents on when they named you?"
That's not very nice.
Well, that's what I said. He got a big round of applause. Zebedee Franklin, good morning, Alex and Russ. Have a great show. Phil's gone to escape the madness. I think he has, although he's gone to Wales, so he may have gone straight.
Different kind of madness. Different.
Yeah. Paul Claridge. Paul, you're unbelievable. Paul is unbelievable. I know I bang on about him, but every time he messages, he's up a ladder. Why? I don't know why.
What do you do, Paul?
Well, Paul does a load of things. Paul does a hell of a load of things. But good morning, you lovely people. I'm tuned in again, 15 feet up a ladder in Beckenham. Now, we haven't got any jingles, so this is going to be very disappointing for our next listener. Eve Phantom, I'm just going to have to say, crazy name, crazy gal, and then go, whoa. We haven't got the jingles today.
You can always sing, Russell.
Well, yeah, I could, but I'd like to keep people watching and listening to the show.
Yeah, I'm not singing either.
Oh my God, Eve Phantom, it's your birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you, 43.
Pushing it. Too young.
You're pushing it, babe. You're pushing it. 43.
No, she's not pushing it at all.
No, she's pushing it now. She's 43. 43.
Anyway, happy birthday, Eve.
Got all your teeth, Eve? All still, everything okay? Happy birthday, Eve. Hope you have a lovely day wherever you may be on the planet. Linda Dave, which is Phil's mum, as you know by now. You're hilarious, Russ. He took his welly. Can you read that out?
And a huge plastic see-through raincoat. And why see-through? Linda, why see-through?
I hope he's wearing clothes underneath.
So why?
Scared the sheep. That's hilarious. He took his wellies and a huge plastic see-through raincoat and the hood. He'll look like the killer in Don't Look Now, with Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie at the end when the killer turns around. The one that's set in Venice. No, doesn't matter. Thank you both very much. No, Eve, have a lovely day. I know it's lovely that you are watching us on your birthday.
Yes.
Alex does a separate business as well as being a top marketeer, and she'll be jumping out of a secret birthday cake for you at about 4:00 this afternoon. That's great. Now, Phil Jones.
Expect this for the next 3 hours, yes?
Yep, basically.
Okay,
Phil Jones says, "I'm a quarter Welsh. It's the wet part of me." It's I used to go to Wales on business, and where did I used to go? Swansea. It was Swansea, right? I've never known anything like it. I don't know if you've been, Alex, but everybody knows everybody else. You walk down the street. I was with one of my team, and everybody knows everybody else. You walk down the street, and oh, hello, how are you? Oh, fine, thank you. How are you? And it's all it's amazing. You think it was a village of 20 people, but.
Wales watched the rugby when we were sponsoring the England rugby team.
Of course, because you did, yeah. Because Alex was head of sponsorship. By the way, Cellnet then became BT Cellnet, correct?
Yes.
And then did it change its? Then it changed its name to
O2.
O2, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is the genesis of how we came to O2, from Cellnet to BT Cellnet to O2. What did we used to say? I can't remember what did we used to say? The big network for small phones. That was it. Was that you?
And they weren't that small then either.
No, but I made that up just to alleviate the sheer boredom of having to do the tagline every time I did the insert. And I go, the big network for small phones, and apparently everybody loved it, which was sweet. Good Thomas the Tank voice. Oh man, I would have loved that gig. I would have loved that gig, Julia. Oh, when the twins were now 23. When they were babies, they were obsessed with Thomas the Tank Engine. And cranes to this day are still crankies, because the crane in Thomas the Tank Engine was called Cranky. Cranky. So when we see a crane, it's terrible. They're 23. One's just graduated from Oxford from English literature. Still call a crane Cranky. What's it all about? Was it red?
Yes, I was about to read that.
What was red?
The tank engine.
No, I think no. I think
No?
I think it's referring to Phil's see-through. Back to my reference of "Don't Look Now." Right, I'm going to change the tone, which you just have to put up with it. We are going to change the tone now, and I'll explain why. And I'm particularly pleased and thrilled that Alex is here because she has so much to add to this. No, the anorak. Yeah, got it, Julia. By the way, Alex, you
Yes.
just to tell you, there's always a slight delay between what we're saying and some of the messages that come up. So it's not people are not out. It's that we're out of sync. It's not the listeners. It is us. So don't worry about it if it all seems slightly.
I've been a listener. I've seen how it goes.
It's slightly Buñuel, you know. Don't Look Now. Indeed, Don't Look Now. It was a heck of a film at the time. Now, yesterday. All right. I thought about this very carefully, right? And yesterday I did a post, essentially to get it off my chest, and about one of our previous guests, who I'm not going to name, and Alex has much more knowledge about this than I do, who had, what's the phrase I should use? Because in the old days we would say committed suicide, who I don't know. This is another sub issue of this. Anyway, they died by their own hand. All right, and Alex will come up with the right phraseology in a minute, not to cause offense to anybody. And it was very sad because they'd been in the studio with Phil, Dave, and myself, and they were articulate and passionate and really smart. And they took their own life, leaving behind a wife and leaving behind young children. And I'm not going to go into any more details. It's all too ghastly and it's horrible. So I wrote about this, not about this person, but about the effect that it has. And on the same time, another of our guests, who had been a guest from Australia, had posted a suicide note on Facebook. It was pretty rough. And so I wrote a post about this and left it. And the reaction from all of you was incredible. About well over 300. I don't know how many people it is now. Well over 300 people commented. I mean, it was just enormous. And the first thing I want to say on behalf of everybody on Men's Radio Station is thank you. Thank you for caring. Thank you for caring so much. Thank you for your amazing, incredible support, very, very kind things that you said. It means the world because, you know, I work in a vacuum. We all kind of work in a vacuum, and it's only that interaction which lets us know if we're doing the right thing, the wrong thing, if you're liking it, not liking it, if we have a value or not. And you have given all of us, the whole team, production team. Sinner's producing this show. He's not on camera, but he's listening to every word. And those of you who've been guests, you always get the emails from Sinner, who does our bookings. And, you know, everybody who's on the team, head of production, Melis, and everybody else. And it's so encouraging. It's so encouraging. Now, first things first. And you can read the post on my Facebook page. It's there, and the comments are extraordinary. The one thing it shows you, without doubt, is that you never know what the hell's going on in someone's mind. You think you know, and you don't know. And the number of you who wrote the most heartrending messages about what had happened to you when you'd lost loved ones through suicide, whether it be family, whether it be your children, heartbreaking, whether it be your close friends. Some of you have lost several people, several. Mm-hmm. One lady wrote, lost four people. And so you never know what's going on in people's lives. So if there's anything to be learned, anything, and I'm going to get on to Alex in one sec, is that try and be a little kind. Try, I know. And if you're worried about somebody, reach out. Reach out. Now, Alex, what people don't know is you work for Samaritans as well.
I do.
You volunteer, you have done, you're fully trained, you take it very seriously. Talk us through this. The first thing I want to ask you is, and there was a bit of a controversy because someone was a bit upset with my phraseology of killed themselves. Well, they did. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. They were killed. They're dead, and they killed themselves. But some people didn't like the phraseology, and there was a bit of a hoo-ha, which I calmed down because it wasn't the time and place. And the person who made the comment is an exceptionally nice woman, exceptionally nice. And she and I were messaging 5 o'clock this morning because she was still so upset that she got a bit trolled. And it was fine. Everyone's fine. I explained. What phrasing is acceptable these days?
There's no right or wrong way to say when someone took their life. As a Samaritan, when we talk to, and I'm a listening Samaritan, so
explain what that means. Explain what that means.
You go into the Samaritans, you do a shift once every 2 weeks, and you stay there for 4 hours and take calls and listen to people non-judgmentally. You can't judge at all, and you give them an opportunity to talk to you. We can't talk about the training and actually what we do. We're not allowed to.
I get that.
Which part of me feels we should, because I think everybody would benefit from the training.
Why is it that it's? I'm not being sarcastic. Why is it a secret? Because
I honestly don't know. I don't know. And you know, in my work life, I use some of the tools that I was taught, but we can't talk about it. Like I said, it's a shame, because a lot of the tools we're given, part of it is learning how to be empathetic. Yeah. And they do tell you, and this is done in lots of training courses anyway, on the difference between sympathy and empathy. And there's a huge difference, because
can you discuss that?
Yeah, because sympathy is, I find I'm quite a sympathetic person, and I would ask someone how they were, and is there anything I can do, and you've probably done the same thing, and you sure. Kind of go there. That's not quite a nice way of doing it, but empathy is more a case of, and I think when you're sympathetic, you also try and say, how can we make things better? How can, things will be okay in the end? Whereas I think mostly people don't want to hear that. They just want to hear someone say, I'm here for you. Talk to me. Tell me how you're feeling. Tell me about your journey. And basically you go with somebody down in that hole and you come up with them at the same time, rather than being at the top of a hole. If someone's down the bottom going, are you okay? Anything I can do? You get down and say, what's happened? What's the matter? How are you feeling? Empathy is quite an important word to me, and to the Samaritans.
You're given the tools to do this?
We're given 12 weeks training, for every type of call that you could possibly get, and not wanting to stray away from the seriousness of this, but you do get some very weird and wonderful calls. You get sex calls. You have to know how to deal with them.
Christ.
You get angry calls.
And it doesn't matter what subject, Alex, you pick. You could pick any subject, and immediately, it doesn't matter how grim it is. Immediately, there's always something that you go, "You're kidding me."
It's
unbelievable,
horrendous. But in terms of
completely thrown me.
But I think in any phone line help service, you get some very, very strange calls. And, at the end of the day, as a Samaritan, you have to listen for a little bit, because that person who may be a fantasist, or even a sex addict, or something that they want to talk about, you have to weigh it up whether they are really struggling with something that is causing them huge issues, or whether they're just someone taking advantage and misusing the service. I think that does happen, like I said, in every single phone support service there is. But going back to your question about suicide, do you say someone took their life? Do you say someone ended their life? Do you say someone committed suicide? You can't use the word committed anyway. But on the phone, we ask direct questions. If someone very quickly you feel is suffering greatly, you ask them, are you feeling suicidal? And if you ask someone if they're feeling suicidal, there's no reason why then, sadly, if someone does take their own life by suicide, which is the best way to do it, say it.
By suicide?
Yeah. Or take their own life. You can't say committed. That's one thing I do know.
Well, hang on. What it used to be is this. Just to dwell on this for a second. Suicide was illegal until
Correct.
relatively recently. And think about this for an irony. If you tried to kill you, it's as dark as you can go. But we're all over 21, so let's just deal with it. If you tried to kill yourself and you failed, the police then prosecuted you and punished you for failing to commit suicide, if you think about it. So to commit the act of suicide was an illegal act.
Which is why you can't use the word. In some countries, it still is.
What, an illegal act? It's not
Yes.
illegal. It's not illegal anymore, which is why the word commit, which was it condoning, it's ridiculous, I know, but get with it. This was the BBC guidelines, which are this. Honestly, I've had to read them. They were just ridiculous and huge. But that's the BBC. We're not. So that's why the word commit, because you're endorsing a committal of a crime. I think it's not, as it's not a crime, that word has now been sort of defunded, if you like.
Absolutely.
But it really was very difficult because I genuinely didn't want to cause offense. But, you know, you can dance around this and you can dress it up. It wasn't the point I was making at all.
It's a very difficult subject. It's a very heart-wrenching subject, and it touches people very differently. You know, I did know
the person
who took his life, and I found out the day after it happened. And you know, thank goodness for me, as a Samaritan, I've never taken what we call that call you really don't ever want to take, actually. But it dawned on me when I found out about this that there is really nothing you can do if somebody is in that darkest of place and they just don't want to be here anymore. As a Samaritan, you know, you are told not to tell someone they can't take their own life. You have to listen, and in fact, if someone is in that place, you talk them through it, or they talk to you about their life, and you sometimes have to stay on the phone for as long as you can if someone has taken pills, and you hear them getting quiet. I mean, I really shouldn't be saying much of this, but it's so important.
All right, let me ask the question so you don't get into trouble. So the call you never want to take is when somebody has started a process. Let's put it into neutral terms, shall we? As I said, we'll dance around it. Someone has commenced a process to end their life. You don't want that. Nobody wants that call.
Nobody wants that.
Are you allowed to call? Can you, when they phone in?
Yeah.
All right. I'm not putting you on the spot at all. I wouldn't do that. So you have to trust me on this. So God forbid somebody phones you, you pick up the phone and it's clear they've taken an overdose of whatever, sleeping pills, whatever. Can you phone the ambulance? Does their number come up? How does it work?
No, nothing comes up. You have there's a protocol to go through, and basically, very simply, it's to say we cannot call an ambulance for you unless you ask us to, and then we need to know your phone number and where you live and your name.
Why is that? But Alex, we've never had this conversation, so I'm really fascinated. But why is it that you can't do that? Because it's this to me. It's a little bit like this reminds me, and just bear with my analogy. It's a bit like if there's been a murder. And the murderer has confessed to a priest, and the police go and they say, "Please, can you tell us blah blah blah?" And he goes, "It's under the seal of the confessional. I can't do that," which I personally have a bit of a problem with, because justice is justice. But it's a weird thing. So you can't do that unless they ask you.
Well, we would say, if you feel you want to change your mind, or if you feel you want help, then we can call an ambulance, call the police, if you give us your details. It is all private and confidential.
I get that.
Can't, but people do ask for help, and some people don't want to have help, and we're not. It sounds awful. It's not a suicide prevention.
No, I get that. You're there to help.
It's there. It's there to listen.
So, Alex, I want to read some of the comments in a second. But Alex, how do your colleagues deal? God forbid you get one of those calls. How do you deal with that it doesn't affect you enormously?
Well, it does affect you in the internal support. We are Samaritans to our fellow Samaritans. And you talk through every single call, and you have a team leader. And if this call comes in, you have to call them, and they will be calling the branch director, and everyone gets involved. And there is a huge support system.
So would they be, if you can't tell me, fine. So God forbid you get the call you don't want. You're then putting it up the chain of command, so to speak, are you?
You stay on the call, but you are the one. You're the listener. You're there for them. And if somebody wants to talk to someone, but everybody gets involved, and you are not left alone. I mean, I haven't had this over the phone, but a friend of mine wanted to talk to me. His wife called me and asked me to come over, and I had a 2-hour conversation with someone who was totally and utterly on the edge of the darkest place I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen it before, unless it's face to face. And I'm really talking about the Samaritans. It affected me so badly. Funnily enough, that night I was meant to be doing my night shift, and I phoned my night shift partner and said, I can't come in. And she said, come in, and I will sit and talk to you and listen to you for 4 hours, which is what she did. And I never in my life would I thought I was going to call the Samaritans myself. I mean, it's a slightly different scenario, but it is. And I think I'm reading bits of the comments, just having somebody listen. But one thing that dawned on me that the day after the suicide was that we don't know, as you've said, what goes on in people's minds, and we don't know how dark a place is. I mean, if you haven't had severe depression or severe anxiety or suicidal thoughts, I don't think we can't even really be empathetic, because to be empathetic, you've got to go down there, and I don't think I want to, actually. But
not unless you know that you can find your way back.
Well, sometimes finding your way back is being there for someone who doesn't want to be here anymore, and they just want to be with someone until the end. And that is what dawned on me, is that if I ever get that call, you are there for someone at the very end of their life. I mean, it almost wants me to well up, actually, but it's a wonderful service. But it's taught me an awful lot of things, because, like I said, I was asked to go and see this very, very good friend of mine. But it's quite difficult, because sometimes you have your Samaritan's hat on, even in a personal crisis. And I think sometimes one should lift it a little bit and almost have a mix of yourself. And you know what I'm like, sort of, quite bossy and
really
have lots of opinions and advice. You can't give advice. You can't give any advice as a Samaritan. Can you imagine how difficult that is for me?
I would say well nigh impossible. No,
I've learned. I've been doing this for 2 years, which isn't very long. You learn to help the person you're listening to find their own way, and you discuss their options. You get them to talk about their options. But you know what? It to make it slightly less tragic, there are people who are lonely, people who are sad, people who are struggling with divorce, or they are struggling with bereavement. And as a listening volunteer, people just want to talk. I mean, there's lots of people just want to be listened to. And
it's a shitty reflection on society, though.
I was about to say, society doesn't really listen.
It's a really crap reflection on society. As I hate the word society, I just don't believe in it. But that people in 2020 moving into 2021 are so lonely and so isolated that they've got no one else to turn to. I think it's everybody's nightmare, that somehow you've fallen through any form of safety net, and once you've slipped through the cracks, there is nothing there. And if it wasn't for people like you, there'd be absolutely nothing there. So bless you for what you do. Let's look at some of these comments here. I'm going to let you regroup, because I can see you're getting upset. Phil Jones, negative weighs you down, positive lifts you up. Could not agree with you more, Phil. Absolutely. Angela Lee, this is important. I work in the NHS sometimes, and we try so hard, but mental health is so underfunded. funded. I think it's underfunded. It's underrated. It's just seen as a sort of possible extra frill. I don't mean thrill. I mean, you're absolutely right, Angela. I mean, this is why we're working so hard here. Also, Angela Lee says, people, this is if they've killed themselves, people are not allowed to be buried in consecrated ground, which is true. That is true. And like, as if the situation isn't bad enough, and along comes religion, which has clearly failed in any event, failed that person, all right, completely, and you're not allowed to be. So the family cannot even have the comfort of having their loved one buried in consecrated ground. What the hell? I've never understood all of that. Andrea Lucas, do you want to read this out, Alex? From Andrea?
Where are we? Oh, yes. Worry. I've just read it. Yeah, no, I have. People need to be listened to, especially if they are feeling depressed and unhappy, distressed and worried. I've often listened to my patients and they have gone away feeling a little better. Definitely. I try and talk to, when I listen and someone wants me to respond, I do try and be very upbeat on the phone. I'm not sure I'm allowed to be that way, but that's how I am, and I can't change who I am when I'm listening to people calling in. Samaritans used to have posters everywhere. What has happened to them? I would imagine it's funding. There are ads. Certainly a lot of stuff on social media. I think it's gone more social media based, Andrea, than posters. But I agree with you. I think there should be posters everywhere. I take all the leaflets from my branch and give them to my GP, my chiropractor, and I put them everywhere. To be honest.
This is horrible. I'll read this only because Chrissy is. I'll jump in only because Chrissy is someone who listens every single day. Always has lots to say, is a wonderful member of our family. I call everyone who listens to men's radio, women's radio, we're like a family. That's how I want it to be anyway. And Chrissy is saying, and she lives in Spain, as you know, driving the tractor around in arable land. That's true. This is so bloody tragic. My son Earl tried at the age of 19, but was found within 10 minutes of his life with car fumes, but it left him with short-term memory loss. Oh, God. Sadly, at age 23, he died from epilepsy.
33.
30. Oh, thank you. I couldn't.
Thank you.
Reading glasses is rubbish. At the age of 33, I'm in a meeting.
Yes. No, that no doubt will be Mr. Jimmy Gluck.
Oh, that'll be her dad.
Yeah, sorry.
Age 33, he died from an epileptic fit.
Me.
I still feel so guilty that I couldn't help. Oh, Chrissy. You see, this is one of the things. I'll come back to you. I'm just going to read some more of this. I'm going to read some more. No, I won't actually. I want to deal with this. For the person who takes their life. Sorry, don't worry about it. For the person who takes their life, their pain is over. That's it. It's done. It's finished. End of story. And for the family and friends left behind, that pain is just starting. And that pain is never going to go away because you'll never have closure. You never got to say goodbye. You will always wonder, why? Why did somebody do? Why did this happen? Could I have done more? And then you get anger, you get depression. And of course, you will always beat yourself up. Not that you could have done anything, but you will. It is human nature. It is within our DNA. We will beat ourselves up to think, what is it that we didn't do? The one thing I will say, and Alex probably from her work will know this, but I know this, and believe me, I'm no expert in this. This is just since we started men's radio back in January 2019. And women's radio in January 2018. All the people we've had on as guests who have attempted suicide and, thank heavens, or whatever phrase you want to say, failed, so they're alive. And they would sit in the studio, or we'd talk to them, but they'd be in the studio sitting opposite us. Without fail, they were all so grateful that they failed, every single one. I've said this before, and I will say it again, if it gives anybody any comfort, that and the moment they did whatever act it was, pills or whatever it might be, The moment they did that, and everyone said the same story, it's almost like a script, they immediately regretted it. Immediately. And their life turned around afterwards.
What I've noticed, Russ, is because I'm because of my show, which is about mental health and well-being in the workplace, I've been introduced to an awful lot of support groups, but particularly male support groups. But one thing, and you've had Ollie Martin on your show, and you've had and Zeb.
And Zeb as well. Yeah, they were both great.
I do know that yes, they're grateful that they weren't successful, but I also understand that it doesn't go away, that dark place.
No, of course not.
And it recurs, and they have tried again, and it's scary, and it scares me a little bit because, as you said, I'm not sure there's really anything we can do other than make sure we're very vigilant and keep asking our friends who we think are struggling how they are.
Yeah.
But they won't always tell you the truth either. You know that a month ago I spoke with this lovely man who, at the beginning of lockdown, was meant to come on my show and couldn't. And then a month ago he rang and said, "I'm fine. I'm great. Things are not so bad." And sorry, things are not so bad, and I'd love to come on your show. And if you have someone that cancels, then just call me. You have to think slightly outside the box here, and it was probably a complete facade.
Undoubtedly so,
which is scary.
They camouflage it. I understand that they camouflage it brilliantly. So.
And because people don't want to hurt other people, they think that everyone will be better off without them. And the stories we've heard, Russ, is that people have reached out when they felt bad to old friends who said, "Oh my God, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you just reach out for help?" And for men in particular, it's a very difficult thing to do, which you and I both know, having talked to our guests.
It's but. On the plus side, if there is anything that one can say as a plus side in a deeply serious subject, it doesn't get any more serious, does it really? It's very final. Is this that because, and especially men, they can mask their feelings that you can't see through it. You've got to be trained like Alex or really intuitive. No. Don't shrug it off, Alex. It's true.
Yeah. But I didn't see through it. Can I read it? You talk about men. Can I read a message from Sandra Butler here?
Who's a really nice person, by the way.
She said it took her many years to admit to herself that she had a problem, and she got used to hiding it from herself and from others. She didn't get any help until 2002 after many years of mental abuse, which again she hid from the extended family and friends. So it isn't just about men, it's just about the human nature, isn't it? And I'm really sorry about that, Sandra.
Sandra won't mind me saying this. I've never met Sandra. We've had lots of correspondence over the years, she and I, and we've never met. We don't know each other personally. But she has come through a horrible situation, let's just leave it at that, and endured it for many years. And she's come out of it as one of the kindest and most generous, and also totally low.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. It's all right. Alex is a sex worker. That's basically.
Shush. Can I leave for 2 minutes? I'm going to be back.
She's a sex worker and does calls. That's how she makes
it.
She's not great, but she's cheap. That's basically the thing. Here's the thing. And Sandra came out of this, and she's a very generous person, very generous of spirit, and generous in the wider sense of the word. So you don't always come out of it bitter and twisted and completely screwed up. You can come out of it and think, I can do something now with my life. And I always and Sandra is a lady of certain years as well. We're not talking about someone in her 30s. So she's really good. Phil Jones, listening is powerful. It is, and it's kind of a bit of an art form. And one of the things I learned with my close friends I'm going to give you for instance, but with my two closest friends, which is Lloyd and Larry. You know, we joke around, mess around, and when we go out, it's chaotic, but we always have each other's backs. And if somebody's got something to say, we will say it. And they will always phone. You know, they always phone. Larry, in that regard, is I didn't like some of the messages. You okay? You know, and that means a lot. It really. What are you? Are you building a truck, Alex? What's she doing there? I think those are the chains, whips, and manacles. God damn. Anyway, thank you very much, Sinner. That's Christ. It's like looking at Cinerama. Look at that. God. Right. Okay. So Sandra, well done for you. Right. Back to Phil Jones. Hope you're all doing better nowadays. Yeah. That she does. And she says, "Oh, good. I try and help others now with my experience." And have you finished building the truck that you were just building?
I'm sorry, I forgot to tell my.
How are you doing?
I forgot to tell my 89-year-old father that I was doing this.
What, Jimmy? How
yes,
old
Jimmy. 89.
Right. I had.
Sorry, everyone.
Alex said, "Do you want to meet my dad?" I'm a bit worried. I thought she was a shitter. But anyway, so I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." And we had a meeting, and her father was there. And here's the thing. Right, her father, Jimmy, is 89. This guy came bounding up the stairs where we were having drinks in town before lockdown. Immaculate. Like, on it. You know when you're in the presence of someone and you're watching every word, because this guy is like on it like a rocket.
Very cool dude.
89 years old. The guy's fantastic. And it was a revelation, and B, I'm thinking, do you know, if I've got to get old, I want to be Jimmy Gluck. That's the guy I want to be, because he's smart.
I want to be Jimmy Gluck.
Everyone wants to be Jimmy Gluck. And he's smart as hell. He works every day. And everyone still wants his advice. He's 89 years old. And it's, I think I got a real thing about retiring. It would be my nightmare. I wouldn't know what the hell to do with I never intend to retire. One, I can't. But B, what would I do? I'd do this. So, people retire. I think they just vegetate. Right. Marcella Gutli. One day, Marcy, I'm going to get this right. Marcella, don't show off. Don't show off just because you're
I'm only Italian in lockdown.
Yeah. Lots of us feel that we don't want to I'm going to come on to this point, and I want to discuss it with Alex. Lots of us feel we don't want to burden others with our problems. People have their own things to deal with. I'm lucky to have a couple of close friends that I can rant to, and they can to me. Without them, I'd have crumbled a long time ago. Marcella, would you really have crumbled? I mean, seriously, would you really have crumbled? One of the things
that's a woman thing.
In what way?
We have people that we can talk to and confide in more than men can, and that is the problem.
And in one sentence, you've absolutely summed up why Men's Radio Station was started. Because women, and I say this unashamedly, I'm an unconstitutional, dinosaur in these regards, but women can multitask, and women are much better. They go out for a coffee or some wine or whatever, and they can talk to their girlfriends and really get down to the wire.
Look,
really deal.
They don't always tell the truth to each other because it's a stigma and people. And I know this, but I'm a bit like Marcella. I have 3 or 4 friends, and we just, offload onto each other all the time, and it's fantastic.
Glad to see you.
They are always glad to see you, Russell.
Who wouldn't be?
Thank you.
Yay! But men, this is the thing that we try so hard, and just to remind you, and it's weird how these things come full circle. It's the only reason, the inspiration is the wrong word, but bear with me, is that I was doing the news review on BBC, and that day, by pure chance, it could have been anything. It could have been economic figures. It could have been trade figures. It could have been anything. But the main headline was the suicide figures of the United Kingdom, which at the time was 80% men, 20% women. I thought, Jesus, wow. It's and they said it's really because men bottle everything up, and then they do something, and then everyone goes, "Oh my God, I had no idea." And women don't tend to bottle it up. And also, and I'm not going to be graphic, but I'm not going to just not walk on the daisies, because men are a bit more physical. You wouldn't say that if you knew Ronda Rousey in the MMA, but because men are a little bit more physical, when they decide that it's the end, it's done in a much more, I'm going to say, dramatic way. In other words, often in a way which you will not fail in your attempt.
Well, I was going to say there is a stat that backs up those figures, which is that more men succeed than women. So more women do try, but they don't always succeed.
No. And without getting too much into the nitty gritty, you got a bit more of a chance if you're taking an overdose and it doesn't work, thank God, than if you jump in front of an express train, which I had a business partner, and that's exactly what his niece did. I knew this niece very well. She was a troubled girl. I mean, she was a troubled girl. And then one day he came into the business. It was a long time ago. We haven't spoken. We never will again, but that's another story. And she jumped in front of the express train. And then we had, of course, as one of our guests, a terrific fellow who's still part of the men's radio family, who's head of health and safety for Thames Water, and we'd had other people who work for the railways, and of course, for the person who died, it's over. For the train driver, they are traumatized off the scale. People always forget that. People always forget, the trauma that something like that causes to everybody else who's involved. The train drivers are in such shock, in such a state.
TfL do have a fantastic support system for that. They have to. It's tremendous, as do the police as well. And funnily enough, something you don't know is that I've just become, and I'm Jewish, I am also not very religious, but I've become a police chaplain for the Hertfordshire Constabulary as well.
What?
Volunteer. It's a listening Samaritan type of role for the police. So it just...
Wow.
Yeah, and the Hertfordshire Constabulary, through the Samaritans, there was an email came that they're looking for somebody to replace a current chaplain in this area where I live, and it just popped up. They don't want to do it with the Samaritans because it is a bit different, and so I applied for the volunteer role. And
it's only for the police who want to.
It's for anyone who works in the police. Anyone. It could be administrative staff, it could be the chief inspector, it could be the people on the beat, it could be anyone, detectives, anybody. And they've been doing this for, I think it's 22 years for the Hertfordshire Constabulary. It's fantastic.
You can imagine, though, Alex, the stress. I don't understand why. And I think I've always thought it was part of a drip feed plot, to be honest with you. Plot's the wrong word. Part of a drip feed political movement, which frankly makes me sick. But why the police get such a terrible rep, why they've got such a bad rep. They do the best job that they can. They do a job that most of us could not do. Believe me, they couldn't do it. We couldn't do, and we couldn't deal. We couldn't deal with the violence, the abuse, the danger, threat of death, all the things that they deal with every day. And before lockdown, we were in I was having a coffee, I think, with Ray Gelato, and Ray was sitting outside. I think we were going to have a coffee and a cigar or something. Back in the day when there was life, and 3 coppers came in, got all the uniform and everything, and they went to pay. I said, "Let me get it," and they looked at me, and I said, "No." And they said, "Well, why?" I said, "Because you." I said, "I'll tell you why." I said, "Because you guys." And they had a patrol car. So I said, "Because you guys are heroes. I can't do what you do. I have no way of saying thank you. So look, buying you guys some coffees and some Danish or something." I said, it's nothing. It's just a tiny way of saying thank you very much to what you do for your service. I said, and I'm going to use the American phrase, which I try to always avoid. I said, "Well, thank you for your service." And the guy, we just had a chat about it. And I say that, and I say that not because what a wonderful fellow I am. I say that because it disgusts me.
It's like a thankless job, isn't it?
It disgusts me how whatever they do, it's always wrong, And yeah, traffic police scare the crap out of me. I'll be honest. I see a police car, I'm thinking, do I have heroin in the car? No. Have I got, have I got a murder victim in my boot? All these things go through your head. You're minding your own business. The most you've got is a mini schnauzer on the back seat. That's it. But
Hey,
that's what you do.
she can go for the juggler,
What she could lick you to death. This weather, if you got dogs, this weather, she's been like a stuffed pillowcase. I mean, I swear to God, she's just going, want to go out? You okay? That's kind of it. Right. Linda Dave, Phil's mum. Wow, Alex, that's amazing. Well done. You absolutely.
Thank you, Linda. There's one from, Andrea Lucas that said the trauma of the driver is terrible. Going back to the trains.
Yeah.
The support my stepson received was not wonderful after someone jumped in front of his train. I'm really sorry to hear that.
Oh my God, Andrea, I didn't even know this.
That's terrible. But I suppose, it can depend on the person who's offering the support.
Do you know what never fails to amaze me, Alex? Is no matter what the subject is, people have got their own experience. And it thrills me. It's disturbing. It's upsetting, but it's part of life. But it thrills me that people have got this instant interaction. This is the way we've tried to set this up. All the tech side down to Phil and to Senna as well today, because I can just about switch on a kettle. But it's great that you can make your points and we can discuss it instantly.
All these points prove, and in saying everyone has a story, that just goes to show that if you open up to someone, even if you think you don't want to burden them, they will have something to offer you, and that's what people don't really understand. And also, you think someone's going to judge you, but quite often somebody else's story is far worse than yours as well if you open up. And it's phenomenal. We go through this life, we're all going to suffer from various types of trauma at either end of the spectrum. I just want more people to talk to people and be non-judgmental. That's the key as well. You can't judge someone, and you can't judge someone for taking their own life either, which I know an awful lot of people do. And I understand why. I know they're angry, but
they're left and they don't know what to.
Well, it's not. I can be angry, but you can't. I don't think you should judge. We don't know what was going on in someone's mind, and when we talk to our guests, we hear how awful what goes on in the mind is.
Yeah. Okay. But the thing is, I just want to read. Oh no, let's just deal with this point. You say quite rightly, we shouldn't judge, and you're right, because we're not in their shoes. We don't know what absolute torture is going on in their mind. They just want it to end. It's not, and everyone who's been into the studio and we've talked to, they've all said also one thing which was very, very poignant. Apart from the moment they'd done it, they instantly regretted it, is this. They didn't want to die. It wasn't that they wanted to die. They wanted the pain to go away.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like I'm fiddling around with semantics,
but
it is quite different. It's like they're not saying I want to die. They're just the pain and this overwhelming feeling of ghastly. Just call it ghastly. Whatever word you can call it, whatever you want. It's a universal ghastliness. They just want it to end. If they could switch the pain off for 5 minutes and come back rebooted, I'm sure they would. But there isn't such a way. Let's listen to this from Marcella.
Sorry, 1 second. Just to say, you're absolutely right, because when we're on the phone as a Samaritan, we ask that very question: do you want to end your life, or do you just want to wake up in a different one tomorrow? Yeah. There's lots of different ways and lots of questions, but it is that the two things are very different. And somebody might say, "Oh my God, no, I've thought about it, but I don't want to do it." And someone else might say, "Yes."
Do you think? I want to read Marcella's point in a second. Is it this is a very difficult question, Alex. If you don't want to answer it, don't.
Okay.
All right. Do you think it's a very selfish thing to do?
Very easy question to answer. I think before I was a Samaritan, I probably would have said yes. Since understanding it all much better and becoming more involved in mental health and well-being, I would say no, because it is not that person that you know and the person that they've been, that they are, that is doing that to you. You're not doing it to somebody else. You don't think that you're doing it to somebody else. Listen, I've never actually, as I said, had a conversation with someone who's in the throes of it on the phone as a Samaritan. But I understand why people think it's selfish. So if that answers your question.
It does. I was asking you as a professional. I was asking you as a professional. A lot of people throw that one.
I don't think we think. How difficult must it be? How terrible must you be feeling to even try to do something like that? I cannot even imagine what it's like.
But Marcella does. Now, Marcella Guglielmucci, who is one of our regulars, and Marcella, I had no idea. We always mess about and do silly jokes and everything. And she says this, absolutely. Things that happened when I was left with my children at the age of 3 and 1. It was very hard for me. I was imagining ways that I could leave this earth without the possibility of surviving. Then I would look at my children sleeping and realized I couldn't do it to them. Well, thank God you, if you believe in such a thing, thank heavens you did, Marcella, because one, we love having you on every time we do the show. And two, your babies, I am sure, are thrilled that they have their mum. And that's what that's all about, isn't it? Wow, stuff that comes out. Andrea Lucas, whose son, I had no idea until like 5 minutes ago, Andrea, that your son was a train driver and someone threw themselves in front of his train. Oh my God, he didn't get proper counseling. It wasn't adequate. He left. Thanks, he's now okay and doing other things. Thank goodness for that. Andrea Lucas again. Do you want to read this, Alex?
I'm reading something before then, I think. Right. I'm getting very confused.
All right, leave it.
Hold on.
Okay.
Where am I going? I was going to read Sandra Butler's.
Okay, off you go.
The problem is people don't hear and listen to others. These days, they're too quick to look at the phone. I've noticed more and more when I've been out, even couples in restaurants are too busy updating social media. I couldn't
What is that about?
More.
What is that about, you idiots? You go out for dinner, I switch my phone on, it's off. That's it. There's nothing so urgent. I don't have the nuclear code carrying with me to save save the Western world. I'm having dinner with someone. I don't want the phone going on. You're absolutely right. Phantom, birthday girl. Andrea, so awful. I hope he's okay. That's kind of you to ask that, Eve. Marcella, yes, agree. When you feel that you've had enough of breathing, you just want to stop. I just didn't want to be awake anymore. Yeah. And then Andrea says, "Do you want? Can you caught up now?"
I'm there now. Yes, thank you. A few years ago, 2 young women that I knew both took their own lives. And talking to my daughter, who has chronic illness, about it, she told me that she had considered, but her dogs and the thought of the family stopped her.
Oof, God damn. Marcella, thank you, Russ. I've never written any of this down before. There's obviously something about this show. People say to me.
Prior to that, she wrote that she was agreeing with me that your brain can't see further than stopping the pain of being alive. Again, I was lucky to have such good friends around me. I think this is a lesson for friends. Keep asking how people are. I always, before I say anything else, I don't say, "Oh, you've lost weight," or "Oh, your hair looks nice." It's, "How are you? Are you okay?" No. I might say to you, "You look nice," but then you were buying me lunch on Tuesday.
That's the very least I could do. Although you didn't have to have 3 bottles of champagne. I thought that was a bit of a chutzpah, but there we go. Right.
Buying you lunch, you have champagne.
Following on from what Marcella says about never written down, Sandra Butler says, "No, I've only written it down to Russ before now. It helps to share things."
Wow.
Do you know what? People do ask, and they say, "Do you get affected by doing the show?" And yeah, I'm made of flesh and blood. Of course, I get affected by doing the show. Anybody with a soul or whatever we think of as our internal makeup, of course you get affected by it, and that's why. I know people thought we were joking, but when Phil and I were in the studio and we do the 3-hour show on a Friday, we'd come out of it and we were rinsed. We were the pair of us would look at each other and go, "Whew, it's not the broadcast thing." that's not that. That's not that. It's not the works. I mean, we're not exactly down a coal mine chipping away, which is exhausting. We're only talking, but emotionally, if you engage, it can be. And that's why we used to wander up the street from Covent Garden down to Old Compton Street to the Soho Whiskey Club, because we needed to. We really needed to unwind. You couldn't go from doing that show straight into something else. You need a decompression.
I also know when you did those shows, you knew roughly what people were going to talk about, but you were flabbergasted, as was I, that people tended to open up even more. I don't know whether it was the nice, close environment of the studio, but stuff came out that was shocking, that we weren't expecting.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
because if you listen, and please, this isn't patting ourselves on the back, but if you listen to other radio stations, several things. One is they use sound bites, which is the thing I hate the most, and people are so glib with a 30-second sound bite. 30-second sound bite is nothing. It's a nonsense. And the other thing is that the presenters of the show normally are coming with their own agenda, and this is, we never know what's going to happen at all. We never know. It can go in any direction. And the reason that we do long form, what I would call long form, is that when we have a guest on, we can really dig down. They can really talk, as opposed to when you do TV or something, you've got 6-7 minutes. Boom, that's it. Finished. You're in, you're out. You can't always get the points across in 7 minutes. We've been talking for an hour, and it seems like 10 minutes. In my head, it feels like about 10 minutes. The interaction with our listeners and people watching us on Facebook, and also you can watch us on Twitter and on YouTube as well, by the way, thanks to the new technology. It's you never know which way it's going to go, and of course it does affect you, but it's amazing.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Russ. I know you don't like me doing
never
that.
bother to apologize. Phil doesn't. Makes me feel uncomfortable. Makes me feel uncomfortable now.
Our guest, Adam, is ready, but I think because of what we've been talking about, I knew we were going to discuss this, and I just want to call out some of the support services that people should be going to. So if you want to call the Samaritans, you call them on 116123, and it's a free call. You can also email the Samaritans. It's Jo at samaritans.org. Or you can visit the Samaritans website, and all the information is there.
Could you do those again, Alex? Would you mind? Just read through them again slowly.
Samaritans' phone number is 116123. The email is Jo at samaritans.org. Or you can go onto the website, of course, and you can find all this out there. You can also go into your local Samaritan branch and just knock on the door, and somebody will see you face to face. Not right now because of COVID, unfortunately, but that is something that you can do. You can also call the NHS 111 number if you're struggling, if you're having a panic attack, if you're feeling distressed. It doesn't have to be at the horrendous end of the spectrum. So 111 will respond. You can also go to Mind as well.
Yes.
And you can get help through Mind online. And you can also go, there's another one called For Mental Health website. It's the number 4 mental health. It's a website you can go to from anywhere in the UK. So if you go onto the Mind website, if you're having problems or just want to talk to someone, if you just want to talk to someone, I would say phone the Samaritans. They're normal. We are normal people who've been trained to listen, and listening, as our listeners are saying, is the most important thing. Just for our Welsh listeners, we have someone who's from Wales. The Welsh Government Mental Health Advice Line is called CALL, which is C.A.L.L. And you can call them directly on 0800 132 737. This is also a free phone. And And in Scotland, there's something called Breathing Space, and you can call them on 0800 83 85 87, also a free phone. They're all the ones I just picked up. Obviously, the Samaritans is probably the easiest one. So Adam is waiting for us, Russ.
Oh, yeah, right. What we'll do, Francine, put your glasses on. Handsome men. Alex is not. What's the matter with you, relatives? Honestly, you can't choose your cousins, can you? Fran, where are you?
You may have the same sense of humour as you
Sandra
are.
Butler said Charlie Waller, WALLER, mental health services also can help within Berkshire. What we're trying to do is we get all of this up on our website as much as we can. Very, very quickly, because I know we've got a guest. I'm just going to read this from Anne Lady. Francine, you idiot. Hey, this is from Paul Claridge, who's 15 feet up a ladder in Beckenham. I couldn't make this up if I tried. Hey, Russ and Alex, we all know the story of my mate Paul Perkins, who took his own life a few weeks ago. A few months before that, another mate of mine threatened suicide. A group of us got together and staged an intervention. I immediately dashed round to see him and sat for hours letting him talk. We were able to get him the help he needed, and now he's doing well. Ironically, one of the blokes who asked after him and advised me how to approach the issues was my mate, Paul Perkins. Christ. Paul went missing. Everyone was worried. He was a real radiophile. He loved radio, very supportive. And Paul, as I said, Paul Perkins went missing, and they found his car, and everyone was going, "Oh my God, this is just like a P.D. James novel. This isn't going to end well." And he turned up, and everyone went, "Oh, phew!" That was marvelous. And then a few weeks later, he disappeared again, and he didn't turn up. And a lady walking her dog. You can fill in the rest of the blanks yourself. There you go. Right. First guest.
Yes.
First guest is a psychotherapist. His name is Adam Knowles, PhD candidate. And my first question, I can't wait, because we get the blogs. He looks a bit too handsome, to be honest with you. And he says, "I'm an existential psychotherapist." I am so going there. Everybody. Don't think I'm not. Right. So here we go. There. Hello, Adam. How are you?
Hi, Russ. I'm good, thanks. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Adam.
You're looking very cash there. I like that. You're looking very. Are we supposed to? Are we interpreting your body language?
Serious space, I think.
No, I'm just wondering if we're interpreting your body language here. Right. When I was sent by our terrific producer Sinner the show notes, right? I'm just going to read this, because I read this and I thought, I can't wait to get this guy on, because I got no idea what I've just read. I'm an existential psychotherapist researching the Amazonian plant medicine. Oh God, I can't pronounce this. Ayahuasca, as good as I'm going to get. Right. I have no idea. I read that and I thought, I haven't a clue what I've just read there. So walk us through it. What does it mean?
What, the existential bit or the ayahuasca bit?
Everything. Every damn thing. I didn't understand a word of it. I got as far as I am, and then I was totally lost.
That's good feedback. Maybe I need to refine that a bit.
Well, I thought, it's impressive, but I don't have a clue.
Well, I'll start with the ayahuasca bit. So traditional Amazonian plant medicine, it's a psychedelic brew, as in it's a tea made from plants that tends to induce visions. Some call them hallucinations. You normally take it in a ritual setting. Often it comes from an Amazonian setting, traditional indigenous use, and people take it for insight and well-being. And I'm researching it, so my PhD.
Sorry, they take it. I couldn't hear you properly. It's me with my 20 years in a small plane. My hearing is crap. They take it for what?
Insight and well-being.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that's one of the main things that, I exist in a world where this is quite well known. So maybe being here and talking to someone that's perhaps not heard of it before, I need to think about how that how to translate it, because it's some would call it a very strong drug. It has DMT in it, but mostly it's not talked about using those words. We normally talk about it as a plant medicine.
Assume that Alex and I have no medical knowledge at all. You won't be far wrong, right? So we don't understand anything about the compounds of these things. No,
I'm not a medical expert. My knowledge isn't about the biology of the plants or bodies. As a psychotherapist, my expertise, to the extent I have any, is in the psyche. It's in you could translate that as soul, but really overall sense of health, of sense of doing all right, of being okay. Some of the stuff you guys have just been talking about.
But DMT is a hallucinogenic drug, though, isn't it?
It is, but I think it can be a bit reductionist to take ayahuasca as a ritual that contains a substance, and then so you've got the ritual, then you've got the tea, and one component of that tea is DMT. So I don't tend to talk about the DMT alone, because that's just one of a number of things that's involved.
Yeah.
What do you mean by existential psychotherapist? That was the phrase. I loved that phrase so much. It's been bouncing around in my head for the last 24 hours. And I thought, I can't wait for this guy.
What do you like about it, Russ?
It's just out there, isn't it? Because most people, you could just say, well, hi Adam, what are you? I'm an existential psychotherapist. And most people go, I'm a butcher. How do you, because they're too scared to ask. Alex and I, we just leap in. Like, what the hell does that mean? So what does it mean?
It tends to have one of those two responses: either people just do not want to know, or they really want to know. So
I really want to know.
Oh, we really want to know.
I suspect you're interested in it, guys, because it's questions of existence. It's questions of life and death. What a lot, you're just talking about suicide. This is going on for people more than most like to admit. And what I'm offering as an existential psychotherapist is an opportunity to come and talk about matters of life and death, things that really matter, questions of existence. What is going on? What meaning to make of it? How to cope with it? Anything to, the fact that we're aware of that we will not be alive for very long, and that we didn't ask to come here, and how to bear that is not talked about very often, and that's something that I try to provide a space for.
Which aspect, you are touching on a lot of stuff which I think about a lot, in all seriousness, apart from your crazy tea. But the whole thing about we didn't ask to be here it fascinates me, because you didn't have a choice. You didn't ask to be born. You're there. Get over it, and you got to make and my view is you got to make the best of it. Can I ask you a silly question? Well, to me, it's a silly question, but it's something which has always been at the center of my life. A lot of people, Adam, go through life thinking, I have a right to be happy. I have a right to be happy. It's not written anywhere that you have a right to anything. You're born. It's kind of up to you what you're going to do with it. And I've never believed you have a right. You have a right to breathe. It's kind of it. You don't have a right per se to be happy. It's up to you whether you're happy or not. Am I completely off key here?
No, I think I would agree with you. Rights and duties always go together. Rights and responsibilities. I think you've got a responsibility to yourself to have some approach to it. And Ruby Wax said in her stage show, she says, your body's made of billions of different cells, and they've got this kind of working agreement to keep you alive, but they're not at all interested in keeping you happy. That's not part of their contract. So that's up to your consciousness, and that's the key part of the.
What did you think of her show? I wanted to walk out. What did you think? I saw it as a work in progress. We bought tickets. I went with my partner. We bought tickets, which were not cheap, and I got so angry, and I had to analyze afterwards why I was so angry, and then I calmed down and I worked out why I came out of it. I came out of it in a fury, as a matter of fact, an absolute fury.
About what?
Well, it takes it away from you. I don't want to. I'll answer the question, but I really want it to be about you. I'll tell you why. Because Ruby was on there with who I kind of like. I've never met her, but I get what she's doing. And she had two people with her. One was a doctor. sort of psychotherapists, and one was a monk, young guy who was a monk. And it the bit that set me off the deep end was that he said, yes, I spent 4 years thinking about, he had one little subject, and I spent 4 years, and I thought, yeah, matey, you spent 4 years in a cell or whatever you were doing thinking about this, because you didn't have to worry about putting food on the table, you didn't have a family, you didn't have to pay a mortgage, you didn't have to pay rent, everything. And I got really, everybody would like the luxury of being able to say, I'm going to think about this for 4 years. Just pants. I thought it was so unrealistic. And I think what annoyed me about the show, Adam, honestly, if I would say this to Ruby as well, Ruby, like I know her, it came across as really smug.
Yeah.
It came across as really, we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And it just smug. And I thought, Ruby, you're a comedian. You haven't really got the qualifications. And these two jokers, one of them was and I think the other thing, and my partner agreed with me, that the egos up there were just, I don't know how they kept it. We were in the Museum of Comedy. I don't know how the walls contained the three egos up there. I couldn't wait to leave. There you go. That was me. There we are. That's my little rant for the day. There you go.
Back to you, Adam. Oh, sorry. Go on.
Go on, Alex. Go on.
I've just wanted to. I'm intrigued by what you do, actually, because I work with people in business, mental health and well-being, and try and get them to talk about how they're feeling in the workplace. When you do your existential psychotherapying, you don't always do it with the tea, presumably. They are not inextricably linked, are they?
I never do it with the tea. No, they're two separate strands.
Okay, so that's
both completely. Sorry, Adam. We both. I hadn't even discussed this with Alex. I've completely misunderstood. I'm sorry. I thought this is the way that my writer's head. We come and see you. We have this tea. We discover that we're actually a panther or something fabulous, and that's our spirit. I don't know. Maybe I've seen too many movies. That's what I thought it was. Sorry,
so one thing is your psychotherapy. One thing is your psychotherapy. The other thing is what you're studying, presumably, and researching. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right.
And they're both in pursuit of the same thing, which is, this existential question. And you're right, Russ. That is the ayahuasca experience, that you might become a jaguar or something.
Yeah.
But then the psychotherapy is to talk about that afterwards, what it means to you, why that happened, what you make of it.
So what got? I'm really fascinated because it's a very niche thing. What got you in? We'll come back to the psychotherapy in a minute. What got you into this tea? I'm using the word tea because I can't pronounce the plant. I hope you gathered that. I'm going to feel so stupid because I can't pronounce it.
No, it's absolutely. You pronounced it perfectly, by the way. Ayahuasca. It's a sort
well done, Russ.
But
lucky guess.
Tea's fine. How did I get into it?
Yeah.
I come from Manchester originally, as you might detect from my accent. I come from a place where speaking on men's radio, I was thinking about this, that it's a place where blokes don't particularly talk about feelings. There's no real great depth of kind of mateship or, talking about what really matters. It's kind of, you might go down the pub, you might play a game of pool or darts or something. And so for me, I was quite emotionally, not very emotionally intelligent, I suppose. I wasn't really taught that by my school or my family in some ways. It's all quite, tricky. And so for me,
because you're very hardcore. I'm joking aside, but Manchester, you're all Liam Noel Gallagher, aren't you? Like, you're all hardcore.
Man City, you're Man United.
That's it.
United. The end of that is all the time at school, and I was thinking, I don't even care about football. I don't even know what it is. I was growing up as a gay guy in an all boys school, and you're just thinking, and there's no one to talk to about anything that you're going through, and it's quite isolating. And the idea of talking like with you guys, with you, Russ, or you, Alex, in a kind of informed and sympathetic and compassionate way, which is what I hope to offer as a psychotherapist, was totally unavailable to me for the first 30 years of my life before I discovered A, ayahuasca, and B, psychotherapy. And both those things are what my life's now about.
And how did you come across it? Was it in a book or just your studies, or how?
No, I was introduced to it by a boyfriend who was much more spiritually aligned than I was. I was very atheist, very scientific, studied physics at A-level, all this. And a boyfriend introduced me to first of all the concept, and then accompanied me to a ceremony where I took it, and nothing was ever quite the same again.
I'm absolutely. I've got to ask. I know Alex is chomping on the bit to ask the same question.
Go on.
What happens when you? I'm fascinated by this, having watched so many movies. What happens when you take the tea?
Well, all I can tell you is what happened for me. I've done
that's
20
fine.
or 30 ceremonies. But no, that's not true. I've also read a lot of accounts of people taking ayahuasca, and it tends to have it's something that lasts 4 to 6 hours generally. The height of the effects are after about an hour, and there's quite a fast takeoff of about 10 minutes. And you have visual effects, you have auditory effects of you hear things that you're not sure are happening, you interpret things differently. And then there's kind of various degrees of journey that you could then go on over the course of those hours, generally guided by a shaman or by songs and music. And there's various things that can happen. You might imagine turning into an animal, as you said. You might do a tour of all the relationships that you're in, with your mother, your father, your uncle, and meet them, or dead grandparents, etc. And then you might get to talk to them. It's very like a dream, really. It's like a dream, like a lucid dream, but very heightened, and it's sort of more real than real.
Presumably, you have to do this in a safe place. I mean,
oh yeah. I mean, thanks, Alex. It deserves saying that this is one of the strongest hallucinogenics known to mankind in DMT. It's not something to play with. It's not something to take yourself and dose yourself without supervision, without expertise around, without hospital facilities, really. So I always advise doing it in a group with experienced people and legally.
Is it not illegal in America at the moment still?
It has
some places.
It's legal in religious contexts.
Okay.
Under Santo Daime, it's sometimes legal, but mostly not.
Okay.
I'm with one of our regular listeners, a writer and film director, Sen Munro, who says, "Sounds scary. It would scare the crap out of me. This is. I'll be honest with you, Adam. This would be my nightmare. I would hate it.
Yeah,
I'd hate it.
I mean, if you imagine being faced with whatever your personal worst fears and what your vision of hell would be, then you'll get to experience that. But you'll also get to survive it, and that's quite.
I was 9 years at boarding school. I know what hell looks like.
So does it? I'm going to be a bit technical here. Unlock the psychological condition in your mind. Then is that what it's doing?
I think broadly, I'd have to agree with that the research, Alex, suggests that it increases flexibility. I was glancing at a report this morning that said it increases psychedelics, including ayahuasca. So there's psilocybin mushrooms, there's MDMA, there's ketamine. That what they tend to do, what's thematic across them, is that they increase cognitive flexibility and sort of your ability to bear distressing situations.
So how does it work if you're trying to unlock someone's inner consciousness in terms of depression, anxiety, or suicidal thoughts? How if you go through this 4-hour journey, how is that then used? Because that's what we're all about, to help people with their mental health issues. How does it work?
I've heard it described as some fresh snow on some very well-worn tracks. So if you look at the brain scans, they sort of support this view that minds get stuck, even just people just get stuck in habitual ways of everything's negative, no one's ever nice to me, I can't do anything, and they're just stuck, and you can tell them, no, you're great, you have everything going for you, but it never sinks in. What ayahuasca does is kind of suspends that typical way of thinking, those ruts that people get stuck in, and neurologically it seems to connect bits of the brain that weren't talking to each other and give you a sense of a chance to rearrange things before they settle back down again.
So presumably, do you only have to do this once, or do you have to keep doing it?
This is a question unanswered by research, I have to acknowledge that. For me, I think the difference between 0 and 1 is bigger than the difference between 1 and 1,000. Sort of, that's how I characterize it, at least.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, I don't know what you mean by that.
Adam, you've lost me. What does that mean?
What I mean is that taking it once versus never having taken it, seems to unlock something that means that you can take it again, but then that's more maintenance, or it's furthering, or it's deepening. But the first experience, going from not having taken it to taking it, and I'm talking about all psychedelics here rather than necessarily just ayahuasca, that it unlocks a different perspective, which the research participants I've spoken to have found terrifying, but also helpful.
So whereas an antidepressant depresses your feelings, which is how they work, this expresses your feelings. I'm trying to find the difference between the two.
It's sort of, I think it's important to say, Alex, that it just doesn't operate, in my view. As I say, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist, but my reading of the research suggests it doesn't work at all in the same way as an antidepressant, an SSRI or something like that. It's just not mechanical. Like someone with diabetes might take insulin and it's kind of rebalancing a chemical in their body. Ayahuasca just doesn't work like that. It's an experience, just like an experience at the theatre or an experience of a painting might change your life because you suddenly realise something. It's much more like that.
But Adam, I've got comments coming in, which I'll read in a second, or Alex will. Let me put this point to you. Right, one of my closest friends, we've been friends since school. His son took LSD. I'm not going to say who it is, but if he's listening, you're one of my best friends. His son took LSD. It destroyed his life because whatever happened during that trip, or whatever word you want to use, that experience, it remapped his brain. He has never been right for the last 30 years. He's never been able to lead a normal life. And I speak, I just put my cards on the table. I don't do drugs. I've never done drugs, not from a moral viewpoint. It doesn't interest me.
You don't drink caffeine or?
Well, yes, of course. When you say I don't drink, all right, we can get around semantics.
Well, it's not semantics.
If you like.
What I'm saying is that our bodies require chemical substances all day, every day. It's just the labels that we use for them.
Yeah, but the thing is this, right? I mean, let's be serious for a sec. I've just had 2 espressos, right? So I can have 2 espressos, and when the show's finished, I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to go somewhere and have a sandwich and walk the dog, right? I'm going to be perfectly capable of doing that. If I drop acid, I am not going to go get into my little car and start driving and trying to walk my dog. I mean, there's a world of difference.
If you took ayahuasca, you'd be able to after about 6 hours.
Yeah, but I can have a coffee and I'm fine. I mean, yeah, but would I be? Would I come out as the same person if I took that stuff? Sam Monroe's got a really he puts it in a light-hearted way because he's a scriptwriter. But let me just give you this perspective, and I'm with Sen on this. Ed Grossman, first of all, who says, "Excuse me, what are you taking LSD?" That's his first question. Then Sen Monroe comes in and says, "I respect Adam's point of view, but I don't think I could cope with 6 hours of meeting my demons like this. Ex-girlfriends, bosses, animals, sounds like a 6-hour hell-like roller coaster, and I have a fairly open mind." Sen, I suspect, and I'm not usually prescriptive about this, but I suspect Sen is kind of echoing the feelings of like, I wouldn't touch, I wouldn't touch that. I wouldn't touch it. I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't.
But this is why I asked if it was always in a controlled environment, because this is clearly something that you take LSD or heroin or any kind of heavy drug, not where you are being controlled and where you need to figure out what's going to happen afterwards. You just do it, and this is very different. Looking at it from your point of view, and I understand that you're researching it, so you've got a long way to go, I would imagine, to find out how and why and all the bits in between.
Maybe not that far, but you're right. That there are safe protocols for taking very strong drugs, and that includes prescription drugs and these psychedelic ones that are on the frontier. But it's important that, although I have clients who have a similar experience to you, Russ, of this person you're talking about, of a high dose of LSD in a festival setting, let's say, or something highly inappropriate, and it's traumatized them and they've never been the same, and it's ruined their lives. Of course, that happens. And there's other people like your commentator who isn't at all up for ayahuasca, so don't take it. It's really is not for everybody. But for certain people it is, and they can take it in a safe and appropriate way.
Is it taken as a leisure drug as well? Because we're talking about it in a context of health, mental health and well-being and psychotherapy.
Not ayahuasca, LSD, DMT even, but I've never heard of it being taken because you vomit, you go to the toilet a lot, because of the physiological effects. You might not get much visions out of it. It can be quite individual. Then I've never heard of it being taken for fun in that sense. Okay,
I just wanted to clear that we're not talking about recreational drug taking here. We're talking about something that can enhance someone's ability to sort of open up their mind and find a better place at the end of it. It's
a medicine. That's why I call it a plant medicine. It's not something, you only take medicine if you're ill. There's something you're trying to deal with that you can't deal with in another way.
Now, here's a question, Adam, wearing your sort of medical hat, so to speak, from Zebedee Franklin. Isn't there I'm reading these because this is what our listeners want to know. Isn't there a danger of adding another layer of trauma to the body by subscribing to psychedelics?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't have a medical hat, by the way, just to be clear.
Oh, well, you're a psychotherapist. So you're a psychotherapist.
As a qualified psychotherapist, could people be traumatized by it? Yeah, I mean, to some extent, I've been traumatized by my psychedelic experiences. But just like other traumas, you talk it through, you work with it. So why would you choose to be traumatized? Well, that's a tricky one, and for some people, it's highly inappropriate.
Simon Buckman, who's writing a load. Simon Buckman's writing half a book here, but thank you, Simon. Ask Adam. You see, you've caused you put your hand in a hornet's nest. People are very interested. People are very interested in this. So the reason there's so much interaction is because it's it's interesting stuff, which is why you're a good guest. Ask Adam if he's read any Carlos Castaneda takes of a Hopi Indian. That might mean something to you. It means nothing to me.
Yeah, the name's very familiar. Yeah, I can't remember anything specific I've read by Castaneda. It's a classic text, though, I think. And yeah, it's kind of it's there in the pantheon of psychedelic literature. But I don't know if there's something specific from that he wants to pick up on.
Okay. And
previously he said all hallucinogenics need to be taken in controlled, supervised circumstances.
Yeah.
What Adam is talking about is ayahuasca and microdosing, which I've never heard of microdosing before, which can be a different form, different from weekend raving, on an amateurish and foolhardy way. Okay.
Yeah.
Cary Grant and Timothy, they were big fans. Okay.
It's very difficult to take ayahuasca in anything other than a controlled setting because someone has to make the brew, and it's not that easy.
Now, let's move away from this for a minute because I know everyone's going to drag us back to it because it's controversial and it's interesting and it's kind of it's scary and it's kind of fascinating at the same time. So, would I do it? I'd be terrified. I'll be honest. Knowing Alex for 35 years, she'd be standing behind me because she'd be even more terrified, and she doesn't scare easily.
I'm still terrified, by the way.
No, are you though?
Yeah.
When was the last?
I assumed it would get easier. It doesn't.
So, I know this sounds like a blindingly obvious question. If it's this scary, and it's not getting any easier, why? And please feel free to just say piss off. I don't want to answer the question. It's not Radio 4. You have carte blanche. It's not a problem. We say that to all our guests. Why do you do it? Why put yourself through it?
It's worth it. It's terrifying but worth it, and that's what my research participants said as well. That and then as an existential therapist, a lot of what my basic standpoint is life is hard. Life is difficult. It's difficult being alive. It's difficult being a man. It's difficult being a woman in 2020 with all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard. And yet you've got to find a way to survive, to thrive, to get through it, to even enjoy it. And that is an experience in microcosm that you have in the ayahuasca experience.
You see, no, I'm not being. We've never met before. We've never spoken before. But so you don't know me any more than I know you. But I'm finding this conversation absolutely riveting. But if you say that, and I'm not being facetious, but bear with me on this. But I get pleasure because the way that I resolve my life with these big existential questions is, it comes back to a silly saying somebody once said to me, which has really guided me. And it's, how do you eat an elephant? And I went, what? How do you eat an elephant? And the answer is, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. In other words, if you look at life and you go, Jesus, you're never going to get through it. You got to dice it, slice it, and in little doses. And I get my pleasure from little things. Little things. I don't need the big things anymore. I've done all that. It's fine. So, just taking Madam out for a WALK. I can't say the word because she's just over there. And if I take her out for a WALK, and and I'm listening to my latest, whatever the book is, and I'm listening to, I'm really happy. I don't have to go off and microdose anything or whatever. And I will agree with you because I know what you're going to come back with, and I have no argument with this, Adam. Yeah, vodka and ice, or a martini. That's about as druggy as I get, and and I'm happy. It puts me in a good mood, and that's fine. But I've learnt these little things. Is that part of your psychotherapy with these huge existential questions? Because they're gigantic to deal with.
Yeah, I think you're right, Russ. I mean, what I do on a daily basis is more that step-by-step work with people, just one step at a time. And it's all very subtle changes over sometimes years. But I think some people have been putting one foot in front of the other and have arrived, maybe 40, 50 years old in a place they really, really don't like. And it's then that ayahuasca might be, or psychedelics might be indicated, let's say, where they need a radical answer to a radical problem, a substantial answer to a substantial problem that they just can't shake via anything else they've tried. And that's what the hope, that's why psychedelics is being researched so heavily. There's no real knowledge or answers at the moment. There's lots of clinical trials going on. But to see if it has this potential to help people who are quite stuck. It sounds like you're not stuck, Russ, and you found your way. There are many ways up the mountain. Psychedelics is just one of them. And all I'm saying is, could we at least consider it without the dogma around it, without the stigma, and just kind of objectively and kind of say, well, there might be something here that's worth looking at?
I think, well, look, I think you have to try. I've got to be quite careful about it. I feel I'm walking on eggshells. Not just with you, but with a lot of the listeners who are some of them getting really quite steamed up, and some of them are going along with it. Is this? You have to try and look at you have to try and look at everything to advance and help the human condition. I'm so concerned about the use of psychedelic drugs. That is just me. On the other side, Adam, on the other side, when I think about all my favorite music, I feel a complete charlatan. I feel a hypocrite in this regard, because when I look back on all my favorite music, these people are off their faces half the time, and the music's fantastic. Could they have created such brilliant music if they weren't off their faces? I don't know. I don't write music, and I've avoided drugs. Don't forget, I came through the 60s. I've avoided them like the plague. But that's just me. But do I enjoy the result of somebody else? I got to say yes.
But that's also slightly different, because we're looking at how, and I don't know if I agree with it or not. I'm not a drug user, and it scares the living bejesus out of me, quite frankly. But we're talking about a hallucinogenic, unlocking someone's psyche to help them with their mental health. Typically, a client that's doing that, are they someone that's taken drugs before? Just out of interest?
Often not, actually. Yeah, often not. If they're taking it in a sort of medicalised setting, such as a psilocybin trial at King's College, they are often you know, they've, like me actually, have avoided, you know, I've never taken heroin, I've never taken cocaine. You know, you're kind of being a good boy. You kind of follow the just say no policy of the Grange Hill in the 80s, you know. So they can be kind of drugs naive. Yeah. So some do, some don't.
Yeah, typically, what are the conditions of, and I'm sure you can't talk about clients specifically, but typically, what are the conditions of the clients that you work with that want existential psychotherapy rather than psychotherapy? I'm not quite sure I know the difference between the two, actually. Because a psychotherapist still tries to do step by step and bring out what's inside the mind. So
yeah,
that's like three questions in one, sorry.
I love it. No, I mean, what's distinctive about existential psychotherapy? I'd say what's distinctive about it is that, you know, it's non-directive. I'm not trying to do anything to anybody. People come to consult me and we talk. It's a non-medical and it's just a conversation. It's trying to get clearer on things. In a way that might sound like not very much. Why is it worth paying £90 an hour for that? But my experience is that if people do that week on week, they do make substantial progress on the things that are bothering them. They get clearer on it and they're able to live differently and happier lives. If the question is about why people, generally, ayahuasca has been researched for things like depression and anxiety, sometimes eating disorders, sometimes addiction as well. So the idea of using a drug to treat drugs addiction seems really weird to some people, but the evidence suggests that there might be something in it.
So is all this...
Sorry, go on.
No, Alec, go on.
I was just going to say, but right at the beginning, we also established that it's not really legal.
It's
so it's not something.
It's legal to take it in Peru and Costa Rica and Ecuador and places like that. There are legal ceremonies.
We don't live there. We live here. But it's not on the NHS. It's not something someone's going to prescribe. But presumably the research, which I'm really interested in, why there is research and money being put into it, is that so that we can find out if it is actually a viable way and solution for some people who are really struggling.
Yes.
And then to be a drug that will be on the NHS or...
Yeah. I mean, there are already NHS-funded or NIHR-funded trials into magic mushrooms and ketamine.
Okay.
The team that
Really?
I'm associated with at King's College are investigating these things.
Why
We're both in shock. We're both in shock.
Why?
Right.
If I'm absolutely, I'm stunned. I'm sorry, it's rare that I shut up, but I'm like, what the? The NHS are looking into ketamine.
Yeah.
For what?
Christ.
For depression.
Really?
Yeah. And never mind the NHS. I mean, this will really blow your mind. Then in America, there are third stage phase 3 trials, and that's the last phase of trials under the Food and Drugs Administration for MDMA therapy.
Sorry,
let me read you this.
Go on, you read it.
There's some extraordinary things. So, right, this is from Françoise Pascal, very well-known, beautiful actress, a regular to the show. This is just ghastly. When I lost my son to his father in the early 80s, I left for LA as I thought I had nothing left for me in the UK. Whilst in LA, I got hooked on cocaine, as it was a drug that made me forget my troubles. But when I came down from the high, I still felt the same. So drugs are not the answer to solve or escape a problem. The problem will still be there unless you get help. And can I just add to Françoise, I didn't know, and bless you for sharing that. This is from Ken Elm Janur. Ken Elm is one of the top Fleet Street journalists and knew everybody. He's a heavy duty guy. Let me just read this, and it links in with François' point. During my years in LA, I was at a showbiz party where an acquaintance blew his brains out playing Russian roulette. Everyone thought the gun was not loaded and he was just trying to get attention by putting it against his head. Oh my God. Police arrived, questioned all present, searched the Malibu house and found bags of cocaine hidden all over. The verdict later was misadventure, but all these years later, I'm not convinced. I'm not quite sure I understand the rest of it. It says a squad cop once told me that what happened was part of daily life. So both of those, Ken Elm's comments and Françoise Pascal's comments are really saying that drugs are not the answer.
Yeah.
My mind's going whirring at the moment because if the NHS is spending money on ketamine drug tests, we said earlier on before you came on, talking about how there's not enough money to put into mental health and well-being, and get people more aware of what's going on. It seems to me that money's going in the wrong place. Shoot me for saying that, but there's not enough awareness out there. There's not enough awareness of men's mental health. I mean, it's not being really pushed. It's been pushed by Russ. I know the Samaritans. There's something missing somewhere, and yet I've now learned that the NHS are spending budget on ketamine, and
because
it doesn't seem right.
The prospect is that this could be a breakthrough treatment.
But until we can get
cost effective,
until we get people to start talking about their own mental health issues and stop the stigma for men, quite frankly, and Russ knows I work with a lot of men in business. I do mental health and well-being in the workplace, and the stigma is bloody awful. You need to start at the beginning of it, change the way people think about how you talk about mental health, that there is no stigma for anyone talking about their worries, particularly in the workplace, which is a very difficult place to be if you're struggling. Surely there should be more money put into that. I mean, I know you're not in the NHS. I'm sorry to attack you on this. It's not really you I'm attacking at all. But
it just shouldn't be either or. It shouldn't be one thing or the other. There should be money for both. You'll find no argument from me, Alex, of funding talking therapies more. But one thing that's worth me saying is that the protocols for MDMA for PTSD, soldiers coming back from Afghanistan, they've got PTSD, MDMA being tested for helping them in America. And it always comes with talking therapy. So these things go together. They have a talking therapist and the psychedelic treatment.
Let me ask you this, if I may, Adam, and I'm changing the subject just a little bit, but I'd like your psychotherapy view on this. Sure. We're going through this horrendous COVID situation. There really isn't a end in sight. In my own view, I think this is a 2 to 3 year program, and I think this is the new reality that we're living in. And they'll get a vaccine, and eventually, like when you get your flu jab, you'll get your COVID jab, and that's how we'll deal with it. I guess I'm not medical, but that's how I see it. That's how I see it panning out over the next 2-3 years. Have you noticed people? You're doing existential therapy. People now are having to really face their own problems because they can't get out to work. They can't go to the office. They're not going to a studio. All of those things have gone. Is it putting a lot of pressure on people that you're noticing as a direct result?
Well, there's certainly been an increase in inquiries for psychotherapy that have been coming my way, certainly since the end of lockdown. So this kind of looming crisis of a surge of problems for people seems to be real. But for some people prefer lockdown, and some people it's made it worse. So I've seen both sides of that. Some people quite like not having, if they've got social anxiety, for instance, not having to go to work is quite good for them. Yeah,
I've had conversations. Russ will know who I'm talking about. Andy Bibby of a startup company called 87%. That it's an app for people in business to assess their mental health and well-being. He has said his findings recently are that a lot of people who have suffered or do suffer with mental health issues are feeling so much better just being at home because they're not in that work environment where they feel they have to hide who they are. So you're absolutely right. And there, of course, there are other people who have struggled so terribly that you just it's horses. In very individual feelings are coming out of this.
Adam, good question in from Kimmy Lashmar. Hi, Kimmy. So if soldiers, police, etc., who suffer from witnessing traumatic situations, will this numb their suffering?
It's the opposite. The advice that's given to people, let's say soldiers or police or firefighters, anybody that experiences trauma as part of their job, let's say, it's in and through. It's always in and through. So it's the opposite of a lot of drugs like cocaine or even recreational drugs that are an escape from. The psychedelic drugs tend to be the opposite. They tend to be a deep dive into, contact with. And this goes back to the point from you before, Alex, that they seem to allow, and this is my experience, resonates with this, they allow you to be in contact with something that's really desperately uncomfortable for longer and to sit with it and to tolerate it a bit better. So it's not an avoidance in my understanding of the literature and people's experiences.
Adam, before you go, if people want to get hold of you, I found it absolutely fascinating.
Yeah,
by the
me
way.
too.
And the reaction on the reaction on the right hand side of the screen is like boom! It's like an explosion there, right? You're nothing if not an interesting, controversial figure. Adam, if people want to get hold of you, etc., how do they plug it away? Go on.
Yeah, well, so I run ayaresearch.com, ayaresearch.com. That's the main site to keep up to date with the ayahuasca research that I'm doing. There's a contact form on there if you want to get in touch with me. I field a lot of inquiries, but it's always interesting to hear from people. I don't want, I'm not promoting anything. I'm not suggesting anybody should run down and take it or phone up somebody and try and get hold of it. Please don't contact me if you're looking for an experience like that. I'm not offering that. But if you're interested in the serious, rigorous scientific research, which is what I'm talking about, taking this in the right way for the right reasons at the right time with the right people, then get in touch and join the push for that.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
And I'm just going to end on a note. Simon Buckman's been writing volume 3 of his memoirs on the right. Simon, one thing is that you're not shy, and B, you are not minimal in your comments, but it's great. One thing to bear in mind, and cannot be stressed strongly enough, is that the street drugs and clinical doses are very different things. Adam is correct in what he's saying, and now Simon Buckman can meet Ed Grossman in the back of a pub car park and beat the crap out of each other. That's going to be something to witness. Adam, thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate it. Stay well, stay safe.
You too, guys.
Okay.
Fascinating.
God bless.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks a lot. Wow. That was out there.
Yep. You can't help but get really animated when something different comes out.
It's fascinating stuff, but wow. I mean, the listeners were having, as you know, wildly different, differing opinions. I mean, Ed Grossman, I thought was going to burst through the screen, and Ed, I'm kind of with you. I find it. He was a really nice guy. I liked him a lot. I thought he was a really nice guy. I'm very perplexed by this whole sort of area. So I think you got Ed Grossman on one side saying, I'm going to paraphrase Ed, saying this is just nonsense, and then you got Simon Buckman side of backing it up with his views. Sandra Butler, we love Sandra Butler. She's suffering from thunderstorms at the moment. I've avoided drugs of any sort for my problems. She's got a lot of medical problems, by the way. And I was given some in the 90s by my GP, but they didn't make me feel any better. I felt out of it. Yep, tell me about it. I've taken medication for a neurological neuropathic pain condition, which I'm now off. But some people had side effects from these, which luckily I didn't have. But I'm really glad to get off all medication and do everything naturally. Well, I'm with you, Sandra. If you can, you can. I mean, if you can do it naturally, yeah.
I think for Adam,
go on.
Well, you go.
No.
Okay.
I was just
saying. Okay, you told me to go, and I carried on.
Well, you were too slow. Slow. If you snooze, you lose.
For Adam's sake, I think we have to look at him in two ways. One, he's doing research and trying to find out really what is going on with this drug and can it help. And I know he's used it, but on the other side, he's a psychotherapist helping people and listening to their problems and doing it existentially, which I think is great. The drug side of it, let's see what research comes out of it, really. Carry on, Russ.
No, I was going to say that Sen Monroe, though, was making light of it, because at first he said, yeah, get me some of that tea, yeah. And then he heard what the tea was going to do, and he was like, oh, shit, no, I don't want that tea. You're kidding? Whoa. And now he said, in his usual, well, I'll get some for my upcoming barbecue. Good luck with that. You're going to have 200 people off their faces for 6 hours. Good luck, Sen.
Kimmy's just written. Kimmy Lashmar has written, it was an eye-opener having him on the show to see another pathway I personally knew nothing about. Neither did we.
Neither did I.
So it's very interesting.
You see those movies. There was a John Borman film, the name of which I've forgotten, but everyone will pile in 10 seconds. Ed. Oh gosh, did you? That's interesting. I'm going to read it out, and if you're still, and if our last guest is still listening, this is Ed's comment. This is not my Russ, Alex. My main objection was his smugness. It's funny because I have a smugometer, which is why I had so much problems with Ruby Wax and her two co-hosts on her show. I came out so angry. But I thought he was just, I didn't sense that, funny enough. I didn't find him smug. And believe me, we've had some smug people on men's radio and women's radio. And you think, really? I didn't see that, but I'm kind of with. It's not something that I put my cards straight on the table. It's not something I wouldn't touch with a barge pole. It would scare me, because I think we can. How can I put it? If you're looking at, I'm trying to break it down a little bit here, Alex. So I might need some of your intellectual help.
On.
But if you're trying to face your worst nightmares or your worst issues, I would have hoped, and again, I'm not a medical person, but I would have hoped that you could somehow intellectualize it or talk it through and say, through therapy, if necessary, through therapy with someone who really knows what they're doing, and say, and eventually, and it may take a number of years, you will come to the conclusion, I now understand why I feel like that. I now understand what has been bothering me all these years. Now I understand it, and I understand it intellectually. I understand it emotionally. I can deal with it. Francois Pascal, you see, this is what's fascinating. All human life is there, as they used to say in the News of the World. Francois Pascal, I didn't find him smug, just quite intelligent, knew what he was saying. And Simon Buckman, he wasn't smug at all. That's funny, Marcella Guglielmucci saying, sorry I missed the last half hour, ironically due to the nurse practicing calling me about my meds. Yeah, well, don't drink. Are you drinking the tea? Somebody said it sounds quite wacko, as in the Siege of Waco, and that whole drinking the Kool-Aid thing, because that was another matter.
I think being able to go to someone who you can talk to openly and honestly, that isn't a member of your family who has been taught how to listen. I'm not talking about a Samaritan, I'm talking about a psychotherapist or a counsellor who can help you open up to start with. Sometimes all you need to do is just open up and talk, and then everything that's driving you crazy is out and you don't feel half as crazy. If you struggle with the way you live your life sometimes, then talking about it and understanding what is giving you those difficulties is also, I'm agreeing with you, Russ. I think being able to go and talk to a therapist, as you know, both my children have seen therapists for various reasons, and they just both think it's the most wonderful thing and everybody should go, mainly because they don't have to talk to their mother, who might give them a completely different response. But
you can't be objective as much as you can.
I try, but I can't.
No, you can't. They're your kids.
It's impossible.
I have the same thing with my kids. You can give them advice based on your past experiences.
Yeah.
You can give them your best guesstimate about what's going to happen or not happen, but you can't be objective because you love them. No, you love them, and you want the best. You want the best for them. Marcella's saying no tea. Kimmy Lashman, Russ, maybe because you and I find peace with having a dog or gardening or nature, we can deal with things, but it's fascinating. It could help with folks who are in desperate state. Look,
that's true.
Here's my view. If it helps, I'm all for it. I wouldn't do it. Would I do it myself? No. If it helps people who are in a desperate state, okay, who knows? We're always on a trajectory of learning, science, medicine, psychology. It's always every day's a school day. You're always learning.
Well, something you said earlier was that you there are little things that make you happy and see you through the day, and you take it step by step. I'm the same, but what makes me really feel good is if I'm really nice to somebody. And I like to be nice to people all the time. They're not always nice back to me, Russ, with my hair. But
I can't help it. You've got asymmetrical hair. It's not my problem. It's your choice.
But you said something that why aren't people kinder? I really don't know why people aren't kinder, because
it's not human nature. It's not human nature. I don't think the human race is actually very nice. I've never had.
Well, my daughter would agree with you, as you know. I was more a case on the, I think people are nicer than you think, but actually since COVID, I have slightly changed my view. But it's such a wonderful thing to be good and nice to people. I get a great feeling out of it. And if people tried it more, then they would feel that too.
They would be much
putting
better.
That out there.
But you know what it is, Alex? If you go and be nice, and if people never fail to disappoint. You do people favors, and it always blows up in your face.
But I'm not nice because I expect anything
No.
in return.
That is
and I think you have to.
That is exactly the point I'm making.
Good.
If you go through life and say, I'm going to introduce Sen Monroe, he's my pal, I'm going to introduce him to so and so, and I expect, no, I like Sen, and I would be happy to do it, just to do it, and walk away. If something nice happens out of it, terrific. That's my kick, because it's not a business. If I go into a business thing, it's entirely different. And you make, in a business environment, you get your expectations all sorted out. You have the list. If this happens, I expect that. If this, you'll pay me that, or I'll get that dividend, or this is my percent, and it's sorted. And once you've sorted it, you get on and you work your backside off. But with friends, and I don't expect anything back. It's just, and why? I don't ask why. The real question is why not? Why?
Yeah, Francoise has written.
Not?
Yeah, Francoise has written something, and hi, Francoise. Also, I think wisdom comes with age. As I laugh at my problems now, I can take it all by the horn and swing that problem as far as I can. Do that, it never comes back. And if the problem comes back, and if problems come back, oh, I can't read now. I do the same thing and laugh. At 70, I really don't it. At 70, I really don't know what this is saying. I need a good life now. Yeah, sorry, Francoise, I've misread that completely.
Francoise,
she's
I
funny.
can't believe you're 70. Jesus.
Neither can I.
What happened? Where did the years go? Mind your language was only last week, surely. This is how I feel in my head. This is how I feel in my head, right? You know, it's a weird thing. I see Chris Tarrant's kids on Facebook and everything like that with their kids. And I go, wait a minute, five minutes ago, we were carrying you along. You know, now suddenly you've all got families. How the hell did that happen? Where we are. Sandra Butler, when I was, let's start again. When I was being me towards the adopted four, they thought I had an alternative. When you were just being yourself. I get it. I see what you're saying, Sandra. Towards the adoptive four, they thought I had an alternative motive. That says everything about them. It doesn't say anything about you. You know? Do you see what I'm saying, Sandra? That's their problem. It's not your problem. That's their issue. One of the great things about life is working out. I'm sorry to be suddenly philosophical, but I think you get to a stage in life where you can. And one of the things is not allowing other people's issues to become your issues. You know, people come with negativity, or they come with it, and you start to get affected by it. You think, wait a minute. This isn't my problem. I don't mean it's not my problem. I'm going to walk up the road if you're lying in the street. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking metaphorically. This isn't my problem. These are your issues. You need to deal with your issues. Don't lumber me. Don't lumber me with them. And that's a prime example. Sandra was trying to be nice, and they thought she's got an ulterior motive. What's she really about? No, that's their problem. It's not your problem. It's true. Sorry, don't need it. I meant to say, hello, Alex, lovely lady. I do forget my punctuation. It's almost like you're French, Francois Pascal.
Yes, almost.
You need to go to language school. You need to go. I still love that show. Was Francois or not the hottest? I'm sorry, I've said this before, and I don't care if you're embarrassed, Francois. I think the hottest person ever on British television.
She was gorgeous. Gorgeous.
She's gorgeous now, and she's a gorgeous human being. But without doubt, the hottest person on British television ever. Although it might come to a cat fight between Vicky Michelle and Francois Pascal. I'd pay money for that. Was Francois? I would.
Behave.
I can't behave. People know what I'm like. Hubba. Yeah, you're not wrong, Sen Monroe. God, everyone used to watch Mind Your Language. Just please have some more scenes with Francois Pascal. That's what we want. Andrea Lucas. I spoke to a volunteer from Paperweight yesterday. Okay, I don't know what that is. Okay, Andrew, tell us what that is. Yesterday, he said he gets as much out of volunteering as the people he helps. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
I get that. I can understand that. Eve Phantom.
Sorry, go on. Also, when you're volunteering, you realise. I realise, I can only say it from my point, how wonderful my life is when I listen to people who phone up, who have tragic, sad lives day in and day out, and you feel good that you're listening, but you also think, maybe there by the grace of God go I. It's just phenomenal.
The best advice I ever got, I've said it before on the show, and I will say it again, because it really guided my life, was that if you were in a room with a load of people, there was a top hat in the middle of the room, and you wrote down your problems on a little bit of paper, you threw them into the top hat, and then everyone in the room was told, now pick out a piece of paper. You would pray that you got your own piece of paper back rather than somebody else's.
Yeah.
And I'm totally with that. It's you don't know. Other people's lives look really rosy, and then underneath the surface, like lifting a rock, you think, Jesus. And you've got to make the best of what it is. Ken Elmjanur, who, as I do stress, people say, well, who are all these folks? Was a top Fleet Street journalist and really knew them all. And Francois also has known him since back in the day, right? There was a time when drug use was so prevalent in showbiz. Well, it still is, let's be honest. It was hard to find someone who wasn't using. I was once present at a studio pitch meeting when the vice president of production excused himself to openly snort coke. Jesus. I've known many users in the business. All of them regret it now. The stories we could tell. It was so. I lived in New York in the 70s, times of Studio 54, Summer of Sam, all the rest of it, and jeez.
On that note, I'm going to interrupt you. Our next guest is ready.
Oh, it's ready. I'm so excited.
So Hugh is ready.
Now, this is Hugh Shakeshaft, not Shakespeare, Hugh Shakeshaft, who is joining us live from New York City. I'm overexcited.
Hey!
How are you?
There he is.
Oh, it works from afar.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm shocked because my ability technically is less than zero.
Oh,
So
you're in the
why-
good group then. You're fine.
That's why we get on, Hugh. We can just about switch on a light bulb, and
Absolutely.
maybe
It's
that's
great
it.
to see you again, Russ, actually.
It's lovely, really lovely. It's been far, far, far too long. I think the last time we saw each other was in Balham, gateway to the south. I had to say it before everybody else did, and we had a cup of coffee and a sandwich sitting outside on a day when it wasn't raining. That was it. That was the last time.
And
Now,
it was raining though that day.
It probably, you know what? It is always bloody raining in Balham. Now, Hugh, what are you doing in New York? First of all,
I'm stranded. Because, as you know, I've got a very severe heart condition.
Yeah.
And the damage that COVID would do. I mean, as an interesting point, one of the first deaths they had at the Montefiore Einstein Hospital here was a 22-year-old young man came in with signs of a massive heart attack. The troponin enzyme, which is the enzyme they test for when you have a myocardial infarction or a heart attack, was off the charts.
Oh.
They then did the tests for, the angiograms and everything to find the clots, to find everything, and found that he hadn't had a heart attack. What had actually happened was the COVID virus had attacked his heart muscle. His ejection fraction had gone down to 10%. And he infected 6 of the doctors, 4 of them very, very seriously, with COVID because they did the test afterwards and found that his viral load was absolutely massive. Sadly, there's no way back from a 10% ejection fraction without heart transplant, and there was just no time for that. And sadly, he died, and 4 of the doctors became very, very serious. My heart condition is I have heart muscle damage, both dilated cardiomyopathy and damage from a stroke I had in my heart. And I also have chronic AF, atrial fibrillation, chronic VT. So the issue is I have to remain isolated, or, as I did last night, we went out briefly, you've seen the photo, Russ.
I saw the photo by the World Trade new building.
My girlfriend just here in a townhouse on the Hudson. And we have to be miles away from everybody because if I catch it, I die. And the problem is the risk flying is so phenomenal that I've been told by immigration lawyers and all of my cardiologists that until there's an effective vaccine, I should not step on a plane. But I keep thinking maybe I could do a run, maybe I could try to get back. And then unfortunately, and very sadly, a very good friend of Deborah's, her interior designer for the place in Palm Beach, I was angry at him, and I feel guilty now about it. I was angry at him. He came in no masks after they lifted the ban in Palm Beach, and I was like, "Look, guys, you've got no mask on. I can't be near you." And I left, and he got very sniffy about it. The last time we saw him was June the 10th, or Deborah saw him. I stayed away from him because he was high risk. He flew to Kansas City or St. Louis and actually caught the virus 5 days later and died last Saturday.
Oh my
Oh
God!
my God.
Yes. I read that. Jeez.
Any ideas, and he caught it on the flight. If I had any views of getting on a plane, then that's been stopped. There's all kinds of visa issues, but there's a complete amnesty on it all anyway, so nobody has to worry about that until later. And I've got all of the advice that I cannot fly, I can't do anything.
So Hugh, did they say that he definitely caught it on the plane?
Flight, yeah, he caught it on the flight.
Ugh. See,
but to be honest with you, and this is where I feel guilty, he was careless, and I'm just like, he was a great guy, Alan, but I think he had that devil may care attitude. He's a gay man who'd survived, who'd gone through the AIDS epidemic when it really was a death sentence if you got it, and therefore had a much more, it won't happen to me, and so what if it does? I'll get better, because he didn't, and sadly that's it.
If you don't know them personally, you know of them. Sam Kane and his lovely wife Linda Lusardi. They're both fit as a butcher's dog, etc. They both got this COVID, and they are still struggling. And this was months ago. They did think Linda was going to die. Sam went up to say goodbye. You won't mind me saying that. It's a fact. And they thought, and it came out of nowhere. I don't understand, Hugh, and I would love your take on it. Why are you've already used the word? Why are people so cavalier about this?
Well, I think partly, I don't want to get into politics, but the information that came from outset from the World Health Organization, which is an extremely politically motivated organization, was mixed at best. I believe, having lived in Asia and understand the mentality there, that basically what China says China gets in fundamentally very often anti-Western civilization type organizations. The information was mixed. Everybody's now Monday morning quarterbacking, as they say here. They're all Captain Hindsight. And I just think that at the time, the information was so mixed. Look at it this way. I had, on the 13th of March, we drove from New York, as it was getting bad here, down to Palm Beach. Took us, 2 days, 1,300 miles. I was warned by a partner of mine 2 weeks before who was a very high member of the security services in the UK, the only other Scottish James Bond I know. And he said, "You've got to get a car, they're going to be closing stuff down." And he was giving me this information weeks before. But I had a conversation at length with a number of MPs in the car who I know very well, one of the speakers and everything else. And I'd said to them, the only way to go is lock people like me up and go for herd immunity. I said, however, the problem's going to be if fit people start dying, then that is political suicide. You can't do it. Then have to take a view. We got to put them all into lockdown. We then have to, hope for it. And I was talking to them, and they'd said, had they gone into lockdown when they first considered it, it would have been 3 weeks prior to them talking to me. They said, we have no idea how long we can make lockdown survive. In other words, do we have another 2 weeks if it was the third, fourth week now? 6 weeks, whatever. And these are decisions that people are, when everybody's criticizing politicians of any color, I just feel that it's a little unfair because nobody was prepared, right? Nobody knew what the next pandemic was going to be or how to deal with it. So they are on a hiding to nothing. And, I didn't realize that my Facebook feed is so full of virologists who are global experts in this.
On everything, of course. Of course.
Everything, yeah. And look, I agree with the herd immunity thing, but there is a huge political risk to fit people dying. And you are getting fit people dying. My sister's brother-in-law, who I've known 34 years, was the first person I knew who died of it. He was 51. He was 52 in his last few days on the ventilator before they switched him off. Right. God. This is a terrible man. He had no underlying health conditions. Everything else did not fit the demographic. So I'm kind of like I'm very, very mixed on all of this.
One of the things that people, and I don't understand why, because it's not hard to grasp. The stupid thinking is it's just like flu, and flu is crap to get. You feel diabolical for a couple of weeks, then you get through the other side of it. Okay, fine, right? But it is not like flu, because the damage that it can do to you permanently is horrendous. The damage to your organs, etc. And the other thing that people don't seem to grasp is it's not a one-time deal. It's like a cold. You know, you don't say, well, I've had a cold, I won't get it again. I've had the flu, I won't get it again. It can come back. You can get it again. And this is why I don't understand why people are just thinking, well, what the hell with it?
Well, I mean, the WHO came out with the idea that, they said, look, you may get immunity. I mean, Fauci has a very dark and murky past over HIV. So I'm not overly convinced by him. I'm certainly here, having sat here and watched what's gone on. The irony is, coming on to drugs and everything else, is that hydroxychloroquine, which everybody that Trump touted, got hammered. When you read separate things, they will say to you, signs that you've had it can be atrial fibrillation, right? My cardiologist here has said, I've never come across anyone who's had atrial fibrillation using hydroxychloroquine, right? And he's a very eminent, very published guy. You'd love him. He'd be a great guest for you, by the way, Russ.
Okay.
But he's never had anyone in all the people I've treated, in all the years I've been who's been on this, ever have atrial fibrillation, which is what they're touting. But now they're saying, on the one hand, it's a sign that you've had it. But that's also a side effect of that. And I wish to God that Trump had said, it doesn't work, it's awful, it's dreadful, because then they would have tried to actually prove him wrong. And what we're seeing with the politics of hatred and, in terms of, Trump, look, God bless him, he's a social hand grenade at best. Okay. And yes, and not somebody that, I am wholly at peace with him as a person, shall we say. But he was democratically elected, whichever way you want to go. And you can't remove him by any means necessary, because it means every future president is fair game if you don't like the way he walks, his nasal hair or whatever. Get it. But one of the things I will say, and this is totally anecdotal, Alan's husband, Kenny, is
This is the chap who sadly died.
Yes, indeed. His husband has lupus.
Right.
Is COVID positive, has tested positive twice, 0 symptoms, but because of his lupus is on hydroxychloroquine. Now, he's having another test in 12 days' time to see whether he's free of it. But he tested positive twice, every 2 weeks, which is unusual. And and people with lupus, as you know, which is an immune system problem, what you would think would be massively there. And his husband died, but he's had no symptoms. So I don't know, as you say, what is going on. Does that prove hydroxychloroquine? Unlikely, because it's all anecdotal and you can't do a clinical trial and nobody will be drawn on it. So I don't know.
Now, one of the things people don't know is that you were a first-class athlete. I've seen many pictures of you were a first-class runner, were you not?
Mm-hmm.
About 5 stone, 50 pounds, and 40 years ago, yeah.
But nonetheless, Alex and I are thrilled if we can get round Tesco's and still not pant. And
don't talk for me, Russ. Thank you very much.
All right. Please, you can get round Waitrose.
It
was the Tesco's part. You objected to the Tesco's.
Wasn't really
part,
the supermarket issue there.
There was the supermarket thing. There was the whole. I understand. It's a class thing. I understand that. I'm a man of the people. So you were an athlete. So this must be all of these horrible ailments that you've got must be sort of double, because I've never been an athlete. in any way. So it must be doubly frustrating for you in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, one of the funniest stories. Yeah, it is. I mean, when you train at the level that you get to there, I mean, I had 4 Achilles tendon operations. My career was finished by that and surgery on my shin. Then I had breast cancer on one side. In '82, I had a mastectomy, and then I had another one in 2005. And my sister and I joke because sadly she's had very prevalent breast cancer and had double mastectomy. And I don't know whether I'm allowed to say this on there, but I said, George, the only thing we have in common is neither of us has got any tits. Yeah, you know, and she's done very, you know, she's done well. But yes, I mean, things happen in life that you can't plan for. You know, when I was 16 and an obnoxious, arrogant, mouthy, very talented young man, I thought by 25 I would be nothing other than a household name, right? Which is pretty out there. And if you knew me at 16, you'd know that yes, you would have wanted to punch me, Russ. As actually, if I went back to see me now and to give myself advice, I wouldn't bother with the advice because I would never have taken it anyway. I would have just punched you, but I would have punched yourself. Yeah, you know. So, but yes, I've had all of those things, and it's just part of life. So you just deal with it. But yes, right now to feel, I go from it won't get me to good God, I'm paranoid. And it's not a good place to be. You know, when I had the myocardial infarction in Tokyo, one of the side effects of that, because of the chemical changes in the brain that result from all of the troponin and everything else, is clinical depression in 99% of people.
Wow.
Japan, in terms of mental health for men or women, is, shall we say at best, has third world aspirations in treatment. They just didn't tell me what to expect. And so throughout my life, I just laughed it off and said, okay, excuse me, shit happens, get on with it. Yeah. Even to something that happened to me when I was 12 years old, which was quite savage. My view was, wow, I'm not going to let somebody do that to me again. And, you know, I just boxed it all away. So maybe I do denial really well. But in depression terms, when I became depressed, one of the things I found was I had a tolerance level of 0. And Alex may help here. Depression in men very often will manifest itself as aggression.
Yes.
And it did for me, to the point where I knew something was wrong. When I'd flown back to England, I was able to come back to England. My brother's stepson is called Alistair, so they called him Al. My son's name is Alex, and I was most insistent that you call him either Alexander when he's in trouble, or Alex. Yeah. And my brother, by mistake, called Alex Alan, and I went from 0 to nuclear fusion over that. And he could have murdered our parents, my brother, and he could not have got a more aggressive or a response from me. And so, yeah, I know I'm wittering on. So, yeah,
you're not. You're touching on so many. I thought I kind of vaguely. I'm going to say vaguely knew you, but you've touched on so many issues that could fill up a 3-hour show. In all seriousness, a 3-hour show. I just want to talk about men, and I'm going to have to get you back because I want to talk to you about men having breast cancer, because I think a lot of people could even think, one, that isn't even a thing, because they always think of women, as I know to my own cost, that women can have breast cancer, and it's rare. And I remember when we did the breast cancer care fashion show, when 2 men were there, and the cheers and the support that these men got for being on the catwalk for the breast cancer care fashion show was extraordinary. You know, did you get proper support?
Well, the first time I had it was 1982, and I was still an international athlete. And I remember I got this golf ball grow out the side here. I don't know whether you can see it there, but I had this golf ball there. Wow. And I thought, oh, that's, funny. Yeah. And it started to get a bit painful. So I went to the doctor, and I remember the GP saying to me, oh, that's a bit unsightly. We should have somebody look at that. So I got a phone call that afternoon from the GP surgery saying, it was a Thursday afternoon, I'll never forget. And they said, Tuesday, you're going to see the consultant. And the thing is, because I'd been an international athlete, and I'd already had a lot of surgery. If I saw the surgeon, I would phone up direct the leading sports surgeon in the UK, phone him up on the NHS and go in 2 days later to see him. And if I needed surgery, 2 to 3 days later, excuse me, I would be in for surgery. So my mindset was I didn't understand what queues were or anything else. So this was just perfectly normal. So I saw the consultant, repeated the same words. He went, yes, oh, that's a bit unsightly. We'd better get that out of there. I'm like, okay. He said, come in Thursday. So now it's just following the process that I had when I would have surgery on my legs. And I went in on the Thursday, on the Wednesday, and the Thursday morning, the houseman comes in, and they've given me pre-med. So I'm happy as Larry. And he looked at it. He said, oh, yes, that's a bit unsightly. I said, yeah, we're going to get it out of there, right? And he said, fine. He said, what's going to happen is we're going to take it out. We're going to do a biopsy. We're going to send it down to the lab, do a biopsy, and then decide what we're going to do. He said, you do realize, of course, this could be cancer. Now, that was the first time anybody had mentioned cancer to me. And I was pretty high on pre-med. And I just went, don't worry, doc, only the good die young, right? And that was it. Go down, they do the stuff, it's on the turn. They take out, turns out they take out all my lymph nodes right up into my armpit and everything else. And I've got a drain in. And I was on a male surgical ward. Bearing in mind, I'm 23 years old. I'm on a male surgical ward, and everybody's going around with their bag and their they've all had their prostate done, and they've all got tubes and everything else coming out. So when I wake up, I've got all this tubing everywhere, and I scream, thinking, oh my God, they've done the wrong operation. They've done my prostate. So at 23, the thought of no more sex was just like, and I was so used to, I'd had 5 leg operations in the previous 15 months on general anesthetic. So I could just wake up like that and have lunch. And it was like, oh my God, I'm following the tube and this, all the nurses are running down. And I went, thank God, as the drain went into my chest.
Yeah.
So that was my first experience, and nobody ever followed up. They just said, we got everything, everything's fine, don't worry. And nobody ever bothered. So for me, it was like, I mean, I've got if you look, I've got a big scar here and no tissue, basically. What helped though was in 2005, I had my left nipple start to puff, and it was a bit sensitive, and it started to come out, the area around it. And I went to see my cardiologist, and I was living in Malaysia, and I went, what about this? He said, go next door to see the surgeon, my friend. I went straight into the office next door, and he went, yeah, we need to get you in really quickly. You've got a tumor. And I had to wait a week because they didn't have a cardiac. I'd had my MI by then. They didn't have a cardiac anesthetist available. So that was okay. So I wait a week, and I'm not allowed to have pre-med. I have to go down on the trolley, and they have a crash team stood next to the operating table. So we've got 2 sets, my cardiologist and the crash team with a crash cart and everything. And I have to be taken down really slowly to ensure that my heart, I don't arrest and everything else. And that's a very interesting thing, because you're not sure you're going to wake up. Anyway, they took a 9 by 7 by 2 centimeter tumor out, and I'd got ductal problems here. But it was, they said, thank God, if you'd waited a month, you'd have been in real trouble. So they took that out through the nipple, and checked that they'd done everything, all the checkups. I never had chemo. I never had anything. And everybody just said, oh, that was a lucky escape. And I'm like, yeah, it was. But technically, I've had 2 mastectomies, and both times. And the left one.
And Hugh, no. Oh, sorry. There's no chemo follow up, nothing like that.
No, they said, look, we'll check you in 6 months. They came in, checked. They do a blood test and God knows what else, and I was fine. And all it was, the second one they said would have been much more of a problem than the first, and that had I not noticed, because of what had happened on the right side, most men would have ignored that and just thought, oh, I've got, I'm in the gym, I've got nipple rub or whatever from the clothing I wear to work out, and they said it was growing really quickly. And the duct, as you know, Alex. The ductal stuff is where all the issues
Yeah.
are. And they said that was on the turn. They froze, and then they took more. They took a huge amount out of me, but they froze it all. And
You didn't have to take any. Sorry, it keeps reverberating. You didn't have to take any drugs, any tamoxifen or whatever, and nothing at all.
They just said, "What do you want to do?" I just said, "Look, I think they were, they were. Everybody was just like, yeah, we've got it. Don't worry about it." So, as I said, to this day, I've never really found out exactly what went on, and I have absolutely no idea what happened in '82. But you do
just get on with it, don't you? I've had 2 removed, not vasectomies, but 2 tumours either side. You just go with it, don't you?
I mean, I've had that. I've always had that. Oh well, excuse me, shit happens. That was a lucky mistake. And just go for it. I mean, I've had, in 2014, I had an ICD fitted in Hammersmith, and I had a very arrogant doctor. And as you know, Russ, I do have an opinion.
Yeah, you think? Really?
And on medical stuff, I've had this since 2001, and every couple of years they say prognosis isn't good. You better start preparing to die and all of this kind of stuff.
God.
I'm the only person who's come back from the heart transplant list to you look pretty healthy and you're okay. And I got my ejection fraction up from 23 to 24 up to 42. God knows how that happened, right? Because I haven't actually, as you know, I do like a drop of alcohol now and again.
No.
Russ sat on the terrace of the House of Commons. But so these sorts of things, and I've had this, and I had a doctor say to me, I refused surgery until they'd gone through all the tests. I had a blue light taxi ride into Hammersmith, and they got very arrogant, and they had this sort of entire predisposed track you run on, which is you come in, you end up with a device fitted, and we send you home. And I refused the surgery because they'd just done all the contrast MRIs and everything. I kept telling them what they would find. They didn't want to hear me. They didn't listen, everything. And then they said, right, you've not eaten because you had the contrast. I said, no. They said, we're going to take you down for surgery. I said, no, you're not. I said, you are not feeling anything to me until you come back and we go through all my results, the contrast MRIs, the echoes, the angiograms, everything. Because so far you haven't listened to me, and I've been living with this, for 13 years. When I was supposed to die in 2007, but I haven't, have I? Anyway, they said no, and I said I'm refusing. You will not sign the consent. We're done. I'll get the professor. And the professor came and he said, actually, it's a very reasonable thing. But I had 3 other people on board with me, and they're all going, yeah, they never consulted me either. It was like, I'd be pretty sure. And soon the whole nation's in. so anyway, Monday morning, the guy came in and he just said, I've read all your stuff. He said, looking at you, I would never have believed that the damage that your heart has suffered. He said, you shouldn't be able to walk to the end of the ward. I said, but I can. Now, let's discuss treatment. I said, now knowing what you know, is there going to be any damage to my heart muscle if this thing goes off to defib me? And they said, no. I said, okay. So knowing what my heart is like now, if you were me, what would you do? And they said, we'd still fit you. And I said, okay, we'll go and do that now. But I had to stand up for myself. And and then the registrar had been quite arrogant with me. I said, what's the prognosis? He said 4 years max.
Lovely. God damn.
Hugh, you are so inspirational to us all. We're getting wonderful comments.
Oh, really?
You're an inspiration. Hugely.
Clearly, you have people who are just, have nothing better to do today, right?
No,
you are very inspirational.
Inspiring, God knows.
No, it's an interesting. It's an interesting thing, Hugh, because I've known you a number of years. But yeah. It's a number of years, and I've always thought you were one of the most driven people that I know, which is what I admired. It's like, when you come into the room, or when we were on the terrace of the House of Commons and all these MPs are rushing up, it was amazing. You're a powerhouse, and I think you have this. What I love the most is you have this fantastic zest for life. A lot of other people have said, well, that's it, I'm done. I'm just going to sit in an armchair and never move. You are just like, well, screw it.
Yeah, well,
I'm getting on with it.
I remember lying in the ambulance after my myocardial infarction, trying to stay conscious. I mean, really fighting to stay conscious, thinking, don't let it go black. Don't let it go black. If it goes black, you're dead. And I was there, and I'm screaming at my brother who'd only arrived into Tokyo, because I'd been told I was either going to have a massive stroke or a heart. What had actually happened was I'd built up a massive clot in my atrial chamber that showed up on a normal echo, and which is impossible. Anyway, it did, and it was just about blocking me out. But they didn't have heparin in Tokyo; it wasn't licensed, so they couldn't do it. So they put me on warfarin, which, as you know, just prevents further blocking, and the clot will get reabsorbed slowly. The problem is, as it breaks up, parts of it were going all over the shop, and on a 1,000,000 to 1 chance, a part of the clot broke away and went through the tricuspid valve, which determines where the blood's going, heart or the brain and everything else, and it went down my coronary artery. And you say about being an athlete, the fact that I had been an athlete, I had a massive heart, but my coronary arteries were huge and clear, because the clot would have stopped at the top for an ordinary person and blown half the heart away, and they would have died. It went down for me, and it took out some of the top quadrant here on the left atrium, and so I survived it. But I can remember I was lying in there and I was swearing at my brother, and I got, excuse the language, but I won't use it, but don't let me die in this ambulance. I'm screaming, trying to say it. I'm saying, stay alive, and what goes through your mind? There is no dignity and no flashing of your life or anything. You just are clawing to stay awake, to not die. I mean, I'm terrified of dying, and I can tell you, there's none of this. There is no dignity in it when you are fighting like that. And when we got in, once they got in there, the professor of Professor Ito at the Cardiac Institute in Tokyo, when they finally got me there, came in and told my brother, well, he's in the same condition as he was yesterday, but now he's had a stroke in his heart. He will have another episode, either a stroke in his brain or another stroke in his heart, and he will not survive. And he said within the next 3 days, and he will not survive. Who's going to tell him? And my brother went, are you out of your mind? He said,
when was the last time anyone told you anything, Hugh?
Went in to sit there waiting to die. It's like, and that's why I'm saying, and they do nothing for mental health in Japan. So I'm wondering,
is that just a general question, Hugh? Because I'm just very noting of the time we've got our next guest. I want you back. If you can come back next week, I'll be thrilled. Here's the thing. General question. Is it in Japan, is that a cultural thing? Because they think, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm sorry if you're Japanese and watching, they think it's weak to have mental health problems. Is that it?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's a very misogynist situation. It's also the most racist place I've lived. And I moved there from Los Angeles. Yeah, right. So, but the great thing about Japan is that it's universally racist. There, nobody gets away. You hate everybody who's not Japanese. The younger generations are better. But I lived there 7 years in Tokyo, and I had some, very difficult times. So I set up a very successful business there. But I was a small asset management company, not a big bank, so they could actually take out whatever it is. They, it is very difficult, and they hide behind loss of face, as do the Chinese. I mean, coming on to COVID, the Chinese basically, when you deal with them, they will lie to your face. You'll call them out on it, and they go, "Oh, no, I can't apologize. Not really. No, loss of face." And then you go, "Sorry, that's not good enough." They then turn it on you, and they become aggressively defensive. And they blame you. It's your fault. And we saw that whole thing with COVID. Suddenly it was the American military's fault that actually existed because they were hammered. So that's the way they do it. And it's very, very prevalent in Asia. And that's not racist. That's just who it is. So when you go live there, you accept that that's the way they are, and you either adapt or you leave.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
No, I get it.
And so really that was it. So the Japanese, in terms of mental health, yes, then for men in particular, there is that whole cultural thing about stoic and everything else.
There's real stigma about it.
And oh yeah, you would never admit it ever. And it's a very sad society now, because there's a complete disconnect between the youth of today and their old elders, particularly in terms of socioeconomically, that the average kids now are, what we used to call gadget boys. They had every single gadget known to man, no prospects, and no means of doing it, because all of the money is held by the older generation. And they are very austere, which is why they have a recession there, because they have no domestic demand, because all the big ticket items would normally be bought by everybody else. They're not being bought by the youngsters, because they don't have the money, but the people who do have the money live austere lives. There are many people that still live through the war, still alive. And when I was there 20 years ago, that was the whole thing. So culturally, mental health care there is zero.
My big question to you is: will you come back? Can you be faffed to come back? Because there is so much I want to talk to you about. I know Alex will feel the same.
Loads.
I'd be delighted if you actually can put up with me.
No, I do. There's so much. There is so much we didn't even touch on today. I just in our digital green room, our next guest is waiting. But there is 1,000 things I want to talk.
I want to carry on with the China discussion, because that now answers my question about the Andrew Marr show with the Chinese ambassador. I don't know if any of you saw it.
Actually, Nigel Evans, who Russ has met, is a very good friend of ours. He absolutely goes after Nigel all the time, the deputy speaker. I mean, Russ has met Nigel with me many times. I mean, and the whole thing is that, yes, that's exactly what they are. And they have what they call like these ninja ambassadors now they've sent out, who are aggressively defending China and just lie to your face. And it's just like, okay, fine. And the British ambassador, the Chinese ambassador to London, is one of those.
It just answers all my questions about. That was the most amazing thing I've ever seen on television. Yeah,
I mean, I didn't see it, but I know exactly what went on. Do you know what I mean?
Awful.
We're going to get you. We're going to get you back. Look, it's great to see you looking so well. My commiserations on your loss. Please stay well, stay safe, and thank you for getting up at o'clock to join Alex.
It's okay. It was 8 o'clock. But Alex, one last thing. You talked to me about being driven. You should meet my girlfriend, and maybe you could have her on one day. She's a managing director of at Morgan Stanley, a major investment bank. Right? She started on Wall Street in 1984. So talk about Me Too. All she said was, you better have really sharp, lines to banter and just slash and burn these guys, right? And they will respect you. And she said, and the other thing is, she's the inaugural honoree of Women of Wall Street. And this is
the get her up. Oh, we'd love to. We'd get you on.
She was one of the first women as a managing director in the investment bank at Citi.
Come on as a couple. That would be good.
Come on as a couple.
Yes, that would be great.
Hugh, God bless. Have a wonderful day in New York City. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you very much,
man.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye. What a guy. What a guy. I love this guy.
Wow, unbelievable.
This guy, I would have talked for ages, but I would never ever be rude to our next guest, who I know has been looming patient. I was writing to her during the interview. And somewhere in southwest London is the pulchritudinous, all-encompassing, knowledgeable, deeply professional Chantal Rickards.
Pulchritudinous. That's a very long word for a Friday lunchtime.
It's well, what the hell? It's how I feel. First of all, how are you? I like to ask, because we know each other. I like to make sure you're okay.
No, absolutely okay. Back from my bucket and spade holiday. I was in Wales for a couple of weeks. They managed to let me across the border back into England. And I've been here like everybody else, sort of sweating in the heat for the few days in London.
Yeah.
Chantal, can I just ask you a huge favour? Hold on. Sorry. Because I know you won't like this. Can you move your camera just a little bit down or up? I don't know how you do that, because your name is cutting you off right at your face. That way. Now you look fab.
Is that
now we can see.
Excellent?
That's so much better.
Yes, now we can see above the title. We can see your little punning.
We can see.
So here's the thing: we're amazing in London, because when it's raining, oh Christ, it's raining, or I'm cold, I've got to wear a Mac. And then the moment it's hot, everyone's going, oh, it's too hot, I hate it. We can never be happy with the weather. It's an amazing thing, isn't it? We're British.
Yeah.
We're never happy.
Well, it's lovely to have a range, actually. You
It
always
is,
know
yeah.
that in London, the heat's going to come to an end at some stage. And I just love the seasons. It's one of the things when I was out in Los Angeles for all those years, I missed seasons so much. And I'm just really enjoying the seasons back in the UK.
Fascinating you said that, Chantal, because Joe Rogan, who, you know, is the #1 podcaster in the world, $100,000 a show. That's without everything else. And he's given up on LA. He's moving out. And he's moving to Texas, and it was only a couple of days. I was listening to him talk. He said, "No, I want seasons."
Right. Okay.
And he said, because you've lived there. I know this is slightly off topic, but here's the thing: because we're all obsessed with the weather in Britain. Now, you lived in LA for many years. Joe Rogan said, "This constant. You get up and you expect it to be a beautiful day, but it gives you an unrealistic view of life." That you expect everything to be like that. Do you think it does?
That's a very, very interesting attitude. Well, yes, I think I always sort of felt as though I was slightly on holiday. And that was possibly part of why I felt slightly dislocated from what was going on there, because it always felt as though I was away, quite simply, because the weather was so different. I think, it puts a spring in your step. I mean, sunlight is incredibly good for you. And for those that are, not feeling as robust as you and I might feel, going outside for a walk is incredibly important. Always walk on the sunny pavement, not on the pavement that's in darkness, but any natural light is incredibly good for you. But sunlight really adds to one's spirit.
You see, this is what scares me. I know we're not talking about why you're here, but we can widen the conversation. It's this. And I wrote to somebody yesterday, this is the phony war. This is what in World War II, this period is the phony war, because the sun is shining. You can walk in the park. You can sit on your balcony. You can potter around in your garden. It's all kind of nice. And with winter coming, and I think then it's going to hit us. And I think that's when people's mental health is really going to take a severe battering. I really genuinely do. It concerns me greatly. I mean, it's like I can't do anything about it. That's nature. But it does really worry me a lot.
Yeah, I can see that. But people should get out more. I mean, being outside is good. Yeah. And even if you've just got to wrap up warmly once the crappy weather comes, it's really worth doing for one's mental health.
What do they say? There's no such thing as bad weather, just inadequate clothing. Is that the phrasing? Incorrect clothing. That was it.
Incorrect.
Inappropriate, incorrect clothing. Is that, you know what? You're not wrong. If you wear your...
That's a very good
That's
line.
me. I put my barber jacket, hat, scarf, Doc Martin boots. Screw it. I'm not going to melt. There we are. Right. Now, I have to say straight away, getting back to TV, the final episode of Perry Mason. Wow. Oh, Chantal, it was, when you see something and you've watched the whole series or the season, I got told off the other day, why do you say season and not just serious? You're British. Fine, they're called seasons now. And every loose end is perfectly wrapped up. Everything is answered. I'm not going to give anything away. I thought it was sensationally good.
Yeah,
sensationally good.
Let's hope there's season 2 or series 2. I don't know yet. I will look it up. I don't think it's been announced, but it certainly ended on a really good note. So all of those people who were slightly worried about it at the beginning when they sort of dipped in should go back and reassess it, because I think it's really worth watching. And Sky is pushing it like crazy. So
I think they deserve to.
Yeah.
And what stunned me, and you, of course, you're in the industry, and I'm not, I'm just a punter, really, but I couldn't believe he was Welsh. Stunned me. And somebody said, it was Shirley Green in LA. She said, well, he's Welsh. And I went, what? Welsh?
Shame on you for not knowing that. Shame on you for not knowing.
I didn't know. He is just terrific.
He is one of Wales's best actors.
What an actor.
Yeah.
Wowee. Actually, there's not one substandard performance in the whole thing.
It's good.
What have you found that you think the folks might like?
Well, I'm going to immediately mention something that I think that they won't like, but the reason I'm mentioning it is because I went to the cinema yesterday.
What?
Exactly. So I went to see the new Russell Crowe movie called Unhinged. And I don't like to be disparaging about anything in particular, but actually the film, if you want a sort of taut psychological thriller, about a guy who's a bit pissed off with his wife who doesn't like him very much and has had a row with her and their kids have been screaming, and then he goes out and takes revenge on unsuspecting New Yorkers, then fine. What you see is sort of what you get. But actually, if you are not feeling very robust, it's not a great film to go and watch. It's pretty substandard. Russell Crowe's okay, but he's slightly phoning it in. And he's gone from sort of Roman, he's gone from Roman gladiator to sort of Greek colossus. And I think he's probably had a few Tim Tams along the way, those Australian biscuits that everybody loves.
What's a Tim Tam? No. What's a Tim Tam? This sounds great.
A Tim Tam, I think a Tim Tam is one of those Australian. It's one of those Australian biscuits. It's like the biscuit, Vegemite and Tim Tams, I think, what the Australians talk about as the food that they love. All right. But I think without being too mean, he's had a couple more Tim Tams than he needed.
Anyway. I saw a picture of him. He looked bloody huge. Just not beat around the bush. He looked massive. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say rush out and see it, but if that's the sort of film you want, fine. It's sort of predictable and okay.
I've got to walk. Can you walk Alex and I through this and everybody else who's listening around the world?
Excuse me.
Where you went to what happens when you walk into the cinema? I mean, seriously, walk me through it.
Well, that was the reason really for mentioning it, because I was desperate to get back to the cinema. I love film so much. So I toddled off to Cineworld in Wandsworth. I spritzed on the way in, so there lots of, gels everywhere. Got my ticket on the automatic screen. There was
you didn't touch the screen. Please tell me you didn't touch the screen
down. Yeah, there was a wipe to wash the screen down and a wipe to wash the little card reader. Excuse me. Went up and checked in. I didn't have to hand my ticket in. I placed it on a tray. They wrote on it, and then I took it off the tray. So there was sort of no contact between any of the staff and me. Walked into the cinema. There were only 7 of us. Nobody else was wearing a mask. I was wearing a mask. I wasn't sure what the rules were, but I was wearing a mask. But I hadn't got a drink and I hadn't got anything to eat. But everybody else who was in there, they were eating. And I think what slightly worried me towards the end when I saw what other people were doing is that even after they'd eaten their popcorn, they didn't put their masks back on. So I did say to the person afterwards as I left, what is the rule? The rule is that you should wear your mask when you are in the cinema. You can take your mask off to eat and drink, but then you should put your mask back on. But there were only 7 of us. I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel worried. I was at least 12 foot away from the person next to me. So I would encourage people to go back to the cinema if that's the viewing experience you love. So that was really the reason for mentioning Unhinged, other than the fact it's not the greatest movie on.
Now, of course, naturally, you have caused a stir, as you always do every week. Sandra Butler, you can get Tim Tams in the UK, Russ Kane. They're a bit like penguins. And then Ramsey Y. Masala, who's a terrific person, says, closest thing we have to Tim Tams are penguins, and giving me the YouTube link to Tim Tams. We can discuss anything. We go. This is what's so fantastic. We go from deep conversations that touch on the very darkest subjects to biscuits. Why not? That's life, isn't it?
Nothing wrong with a biscuit.
What I'd rather be with the biscuits. What I don't even have any biscuits in the house. What else has caught? I dare not. I go through a whole packet. I'm just sitting there. What else has caught your fancy?
Well, I've mentioned BritBox a few times before, which is the free service that comes from the BBC and ITV. Absolutely worth signing up with BritBox. It really is. It's got fantastic things on. I never watched Auf Wiedersehen Pet from 1980, early 1980s. Yes. And the reason I mentioned it is, my initial question was, what is the connection between Auf Wiedersehen Pet, Quadrophenia, and MasterChef?
Phil Daniels.
No, well, I don't know who Phil Daniels is. You might be right, but that wasn't the answer I was looking for. The answer is Frank Rodham, who directed Quadrophenia and devised MasterChef.
No,
co-created Auf Wiedersehen Pet. He's obviously got a very interesting mind.
But how random is that?
You
can kind of get Quadrophenia with that ensemble acting, and certainly Auf Wiedersehen Pet, which my late dear friend Francis Maguire directed some of those shows. I don't know if you knew that. those are both wonderful ensemble pieces. But how do they suddenly think of MasterChef? That's genius.
No idea. Clever man, clever brain.
Alex, do you see? This is what we need to do. We need to think of something that the world just goes, "That's great."
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like
You're happy. Anything. I don't know. That's the point. You got to think about.
This is
All
great.
right. So did you like Auf Wiedersehen,
But
Pet?
the reason for mentioning it is so lovely. It is so cheerful. I mean, you know, it's a story of, for those that don't remember, it's about 7 British guys who go to Germany. There are no jobs in the UK, and they go to Germany to work on a building site. Fantastic cast: Jimmy Nail, Tim Spall, Tim Healy, the wonderful Kevin Waitley. I mean, people that we now know are, you know, drama kings in this country. It was beautifully written by Dick Clement and Ian Lefrene, who also wrote Porridge.
I forgot they wrote it. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, right.
And they wrote Porridge, and they wrote The Likely Lads. So it's every word is an absolute gem, and it's just delightful. So if you need cheering up, go back and watch Auf Wiedersehen, Pep, because I think it's a terrifically good series and absolutely stands the test of time. You don't miss that there are no mobile telephones. Nobody's wearing a high-vis jacket. You know, it's really wonderful.
Health and safety had not been invented.
Yeah. So I would go and have a look at that. And then something completely different for Francophiles. If you haven't ever seen a French TV series on Netflix called Call My Agent, go and see it. It's about a showbiz agency or a talent agency based in Paris. And right at the very beginning, the guy who runs the agency dies, and the 4 partners then have to take it over. It's very funny. I mean, French humor is different to ours, but this is really good. The stories are great, and if you want something a little bit different, then go and watch that. Call My Agent.
Call My Agent. Where
Call My Agent.
That? Where will you find it?
It's on Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah, they've made 3 series. I think it's now finished, but there are 3 perfect series. They're, you know, short and sharp and fun, and definitely worth watching. So,
and it's all. And I'm asking a stupid question here. It's not voiced over. Presumably, it's subtitles.
It's all subtitles. It is all
Right.
subtitles.
I prefer that to be even with my reading eyesight. I don't even. It's great because doing this, I have to wear my reading glasses. When I watch TV, if I put them on, I couldn't even see the screen. So that subtitles are fine for me. That's, you know, it's ridiculous. Sandra Butler saying, "I remember it the first time around." Auf Wiedersehen, Pep.
Yeah. Well, I'm very pleased that I've gone
to
back
Jimmy
to
Nail?
pick up something.
Yeah, what happened to Jimmy Nail, Chantal?
Well, do you know, that's an incredibly good question. He became really a singer, composer.
Crocodile Shoes, wasn't it?
Crocodile Shoes. I think his main career is now in the music business. I did actually look that up this morning because I didn't know that. And I also wrote to our mutual friend Denise Welsh to tell her that I'd been having such fun going back and watching it. She had been married to Tim Healy in those days, I think. And I did say to her, by the way, what happened to Jimmy Nail? But I looked it up at the same time. But I think he's in the music business.
If only Tim Healy and Denise Welsh had produced a son who was one of the biggest rock stars in the world. If only. What are the chances? They must think, if only we'd have done that.
I know. And for those that don't know, their son Fran is the lead singer of the 1975 and writes most of the music.
Matty. He writes most of the music and is a global superstar and still treats his mum like mum. And so what did you I've got to die. Just these things kill me because whatever you do, you know, you're still the parents, and you're just boring. And so, what did you do? Nothing really. And then she looked and said, "Wait a minute, hang on. You played in, I think, somewhere in Scandinavia. You played to 250,000 people. 250,000 people turned up to see the band. Yeah,
he is a superstar.
Don't you think you could have?" And Denise is going, "Don't you think you could have phoned me to tell me that my son just played to 250,000 people?" Oh, Mum, you know. This is kids. What can you do?
I know, kids. And so in fact, their other son, I think, has been in Emmerdale recently.
Yeah, he is a terrific actor. Now, what is it? They did a very, very, very quickly, because I know we're running out of time. They did a wonderful short film, Denise Welsh and her other son, the actor, and they did, it was all about depression. It's magnificent. You can find it on YouTube.
It was the first thing that Denise wrote and directed it, and it was about depression. and she acted in it. You're right, with Louis, and it's a beautiful piece. It's a 20-minute short. It was seen at several festivals. She brought it out about 2.5 years ago, I think, and it's really
shocking.
worth it.
It's a shocking. I mean, when I say shocking, it shocks you. It's quite brilliant. Chantal, I'm so sorry. We have completely run out of time.
Lots more to talk about next week.
Please accept my own apologies for delaying you, because I know you're busier than God, but thank you. Bless you for joining us. And look forward to seeing you one day personally. That'll be just marvelous. Thanks, Chantal.
See you next
now,
week.
my thanks to Alex. Alex, you have been marvelous. And,
thank you. My pleasure.
The moment I say that sounds patronizing, and that's just shit. I didn't mean that to be. You've been terrific. You know, asking you
the guests have been great.
You've been fantastic. You've added so much to the last 3 hours, and I can't thank you. You really have. It's been brilliant. Thank you very
so quickly.
It's been ridiculous. I'm waiting for Sinner to tell me when I've got clocks everywhere here. So because I won't have normally Phil's looking and goes, and that's it. And then the little jingle comes up. So I'm expecting Sinner to go, get off, in a sort of very polite Sinner way, who's our producer. So that is that.
20
anyway,
seconds to go.
how many? What we got?
20 seconds.
In which case, I
on
will wish.
On the top left corner, it's got live. See?
No, it's too complicated for me. I've got to look at it. God bless everybody. Thanks for your conversation. It's been wonderful. See you Monday, 12 o'clock.